This meeting is for family only, Uncle Richard sneered, his expensive suit failing to hide his growing paunch as he blocked the doorway to the conference room. You're not welcome here, Alex. I stood in the marble-floored hallway of Morrison Associates, the law firm that had handled my grandfather's affairs for 4 decades, facing the man who'd spent years trying to convince everyone I wasn't really part of the family. Behind him, I could see my cousins and their spouses gathering for the will reading, all of them pointedly avoiding eye contact. Actually, I replied calmly, Mr. Morrison specifically asked me to be here. Of course he did, Richard scoffed. You probably begged him, hoping Grandpa left you some scraps out of pity. But we all know you stopped being family when you abandoned the company. Abandoned, that's what they called my decision to get an MBA instead of accepting the entry-level position Richard had offered me at Morrison Manufacturing 5 years ago. A position that would have kept me firmly under his thumb, just like my cousins. Richard, James Morrison's voice cut through the tension. The elderly lawyer appeared in the doorway, his silver hair and impeccable suit a stark contrast to Richard's red-faced hostility. Please take your seat, we're about to begin. James, you can't be serious, Richard protested. This ungrateful brat turned his back on everything Grandpa built. He has no right to be here. Mr. Morrison's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught a slight twinkle in his eye. Nevertheless, Alexander's presence is required. Now, shall we proceed? I'm Alexander Chen, 28 years old, and until this moment, my family thought I was nothing more than a disappointment, the grandson who'd rejected his birthright to pursue his own path. What they didn't know was that my path had been carefully planned with the help of the man they were all gathered to remember. As I took a seat at the far end of the conference table, I felt the weight of hostile stares from my relatives. Aunt Patricia, Richard's wife, whispered something to my cousin Michael, who smirked in my direction. My other cousins, Jennifer and David, were too busy checking their phones to acknowledge my presence. Only my cousin Emma offered a small, hesitant smile before her father, Richard, shot her a warning glance. Now that everyone is here, Mr. Morrison began, opening an elegant leather portfolio, we can proceed with the reading of Harold Chen's last will and testament. I thought about my grandfather, who had passed away 2 weeks ago at the age of 82. To the world, he had been Harold Chen, founder and CEO of Morrison Manufacturing, a self-made success story who built a small machine shop into a $500 million company. To me, he had been much more, a mentor, a confidant, and the architect of a plan that was about to shock everyone in this room. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat and began reading. The initial bequests were exactly what everyone expected: personal items, family heirlooms, and monetary gifts distributed among the family members. Richard nodded approvingly as his children received their shares, while pointedly glancing in my direction when my name wasn't mentioned. And now, Mr. Morrison continued, we come to the matter of Morrison Manufacturing. The room grew silent. This was what they had all been waiting for. Richard sat up straighter, adjusting his tie with an air of anticipation. For years, he had been telling anyone who would listen that he was the natural successor to lead the company. Regarding the ownership and management of Morrison Manufacturing, Mr. Morrison read, I, Harold Chen, having full faculty of my mental capacities, hereby declare that effective immediately upon my death, all shares and controlling interest in the company shall transfer to. Richard was already half rising from his chair, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. Phoenix Holdings LLC. The silence in the room suddenly took on a different quality. Richard's smile froze. What? He sputtered. What is Phoenix Holdings? James, what is this nonsense? Mr. Morrison continued as if he hadn't been interrupted. Furthermore, I hereby announce that Phoenix Holdings LLC, now the parent company of Morrison Manufacturing, has appointed its CEO as the new Chief Executive Officer of Morrison Manufacturing, effective immediately. Richard's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is outrageous. Who owns this Phoenix Holdings? Some corporate raiders? Did they pressure Dad into this? I'll fight this in court. Mr. Morrison finally looked up from his papers, that same twinkle in his eye. Actually, Richard, I believe you already know the CEO of Phoenix Holdings. He turned to me. Alex, would you like to explain? The room fell silent as every head turned toward me. I stood slowly, straightening my own carefully chosen suit. Phoenix Holdings LLC was established 3 years ago, I said, my voice steady. Grandpa and I founded it together while I was getting my MBA. He transferred his controlling interest in Morrison Manufacturing to Phoenix Holdings 2 years ago, making me the de facto owner of the company. The explosion was immediate. Richard leapt to his feet, knocking his chair backward. This is impossible. A trick. Dad would never. It's all perfectly legal. Mr. Morrison interrupted, producing another document. Harold and Alex planned this transition meticulously. While you were all focused on your positions within Morrison Manufacturing, Alex was learning how to lead it. My cousins stared at me in shock. Jennifer had finally looked up from her phone. David's mouth hung open. Emma's small smile had grown slightly wider. Those consulting jobs, Michael said slowly, the ones you took during business school. I nodded. I was actually analyzing different divisions of Morrison Manufacturing, identifying areas for improvement. Grandpa received all my reports. The European expansion plan, Jennifer whispered. That was you? Yes, I confirmed. Along with the sustainability initiative and the new automation project, I've been helping run the company from the outside for the past 2 years. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is a betrayal. Dad promised me I would take over. I've given 30 years to this company. And in those 30 years, I replied calmly, what has actually improved under your leadership? Our market share has dropped 15%. Employee turnover is at an all-time high. The only thing that's grown is your salary. How dare you? Grandpa dared. I cut him off. He saw what was happening to his life's work. That's why he approached me 5 years ago. After you tried to force me into that entry-level position, he knew the company needed fresh perspective, not just another yes man. Mr. Morrison produced more documents. I have here the full transfer of ownership records, board approvals, and Harold's personal letter explaining his decision. Would anyone like to review them? Richard was still sputtering, but Patricia touched his arm, shaking her head slightly. She, at least, seemed to recognize the futility of fighting this. There's more, I added, opening my own portfolio. Grandpa left instructions about the current management structure. I looked directly at Richard. You're being offered early retirement, effective immediately. Your severance package is quite generous. You can't fire me. I'm your uncle. I'm not firing you. I'm offering you a choice. You can retire with a full pension and benefits, or we can discuss your performance record in detail, including the Jensen contract and the missing inventory from last quarter. Richard's face went from red to white. Behind him, Patricia's eyes narrowed. They both knew exactly what I was referring to. Of course, I continued, this offer extends only to you, Michael, Jennifer, David. Your positions are secure, assuming you want to stay, though you'll be reporting to your new department heads, not to each other. My cousins exchanged glances, a mixture of relief and uncertainty on their faces. They had grown up in their father's shadow, never allowed to develop their own capabilities. Maybe now they would have the chance. Emma, I turned to my youngest cousin, who had always been different from her siblings. I'd like you to head our new innovation division, if you're interested. Grandpa always said you had the most potential, but Richard kept you in accounting. Emma's face lit up, while Richard looked like he might explode. Before he could speak, Mr. Morrison interrupted again. There are several more documents to review, he said. Alex, would you like to continue this meeting in your office, the one that was previously your grandfather's? I nodded, gathering my papers. Please have security escort Richard out after he signs the retirement papers. Everyone else, we'll meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss the reorganization. As I walked toward the door, Richard finally found his voice again. This isn't over, he growled. You can't just walk in here and take everything. I turned back one last time. I didn't take anything, Uncle Richard. I earned it, the same way Grandpa did, through hard work, innovation, and understanding that a company is more than just a source of personal profit. The only difference is, I did it without anyone knowing. I left them there, walking through the familiar halls of Morrison Associates toward my waiting car. My phone buzzed. A message from Emma. That was amazing. Richard is still having a meltdown. See you tomorrow, boss. I smiled, thinking about the changes to come. Grandpa had taught me that true leadership isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about vision, dedication, and the courage to do what's necessary, even when it means taking the harder path. The next morning, I arrived at Morrison Manufacturing headquarters at 7 a.m., using the key Grandpa had given me years ago. The early hour reminded me of the days I'd spent here as a teenager, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up while Richard and his children focused on their executive perks. The security guard, old Mr. Jenkins, didn't even blink when I walked in. "Morning, Alex," he said with a knowing smile. Or should I say, Mr. Chen now? "Alex is still fine, Mr. Jenkins," I replied. "You've known me since I was in high school." "Your grandpa would be proud," he said. "He always told me you were the one to watch." In my grandfather's, now my, office, everything was exactly as he had left it. The same photographs on the wall, the same worn leather chair, the same view of the manufacturing floor below. But there were changes coming, innovations that would honor his legacy while moving the company forward. I sat down at the desk, opening my laptop to review the messages that had already started flowing in. News of the ownership change had spread quickly through the industry. Our competitors were nervous, our partners curious, and our employees, well, that would depend on how I handled the next few weeks. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Emma stood there, an hour early for our meeting, clutching a thick folder. "I hope it's okay," she said, somewhat nervously. "I couldn't sleep last night, so I started working on some ideas for the innovation division." I gestured for her to sit. "I'm glad you're here early. There's something I want to show you." From my briefcase, I pulled out a familiar leather-bound notebook, my grandfather's journal. I opened it to a page he had shown me 3 years ago, where he had written his observations about each family member. "Read what he wrote about you," I said, passing it to her. Emma's eyes widened as she read. Emma has the same spark I saw in Alex, the ability to see beyond what is to what could be. Richard has buried her talent in numbers, but she dreams in innovations. She will be crucial to the company's future, once she's given the chance to spread her wings. Tears formed in her eyes. "He really wrote this?" "He did, and he was right. That's why I want you to be more than just the head of the innovation division. I want you to be my deputy CEO." She looked up, startled. "But I'm not ready. I don't have the experience." "Neither did I 3 years ago," I replied. "But Grandpa knew what he was doing. He saw the potential in both of us. Now it's time to prove him right." As Emma composed herself, wiping her eyes, another knock came at the door. Through the glass, I could see the rest of the management team gathering for our 9 a.m. meeting. It was time to begin the next chapter of Morrison Manufacturing. "Ready?" I asked Emma. She straightened her shoulders, tucking the journal carefully back into my briefcase. "Ready, boss." "Just Alex," I reminded her with a smile. "We're family, after all." Opening the door, I welcomed the team into what had been my grandfather's office for 40 years. Some faces were familiar, others new. All were watching me carefully, wondering what changes were coming. "Good morning, everyone," I began. "Let's talk about the future of Morrison Manufacturing." As I started my presentation, I caught a glimpse of my grandfather's photo on the wall behind me. He was smiling, that knowing smile of his, the one that had appeared every time he told me, "Patience, Alex, the best success stories are the ones no one sees coming." He had been right about that, as he had been right about so many things. The company he had built was about to evolve in ways Richard could never have imagined. And somewhere, I knew, Grandpa was watching, that knowing smile still on his face. The next few months were transformative for Morrison Manufacturing. The retirement of Richard and several of his closest allies cleared the way for fresh perspectives and new ideas. Emma's innovation division quickly became the talk of the industry, launching 3 new product lines in the first quarter alone. Michael, Jennifer, and David, freed from their father's oppressive management style, began to show promising signs of actual leadership potential. With proper mentoring and clear expectations, they started contributing meaningfully to their departments instead of just collecting paychecks. One afternoon, about 6 months after the will reading, Mr. Morrison stopped by my office for a casual visit. "Harold would be pleased," he said, looking around at the subtle changes I'd made to the office, including a wall now dedicated to showcasing employee innovations, though I suspect he knew exactly how this would play out. "Did he tell you the whole plan?" I asked. curious about how much my grandfather had shared with his old friend. James smiled. He told me enough. The day you turned down Richard's job offer, Harold called me. Laughing, he said, "James, the boy finally showed his cards. He's ready." I thought about that day, how everyone had seen it as my greatest failure, while Grandpa had recognized it as the moment I proved I was worthy of his legacy. "I miss him," I admitted. "There are still days I want to ask his advice." "He left you everything you need," James replied, tapping his temple, "including the wisdom to know when to forge your own path." As if to prove his point, my phone buzzed with a message from our biggest client, confirming their approval of Emma's new design concept, a project that would double our annual revenue while setting new industry standards for sustainability. "Speaking of forging paths," James continued, "I heard Richard's been making noise about a wrongful termination lawsuit." I nodded, unconcerned. "Let him try. We have documentation of every questionable decision he made in the past 5 years. He won't want that becoming public record." "Very much your grandfather's grandson," James chuckled. "He always said the best defense is having better receipts." After James left, I walked down to the manufacturing floor, something I'd made a habit of doing daily. Unlike Richard, who had rarely left his executive suite, I believed in maintaining a connection with every level of the company. The floor was humming with activity, but there was a different energy now. Gone was the tension that had characterized Richard's reign. In its place was a sense of purpose, of pride in the work being done. Near the new automated assembly line, one of our first major improvements, I spotted Emma leading a tour group from our latest potential partner. She was explaining the innovations we'd implemented, her enthusiasm evident even from a distance. "Mr. Chen," a voice called out. It was Maria, one of our longest-serving line supervisors. "Got a minute?" I stopped to chat, listening as she explained an idea she had for improving the workflow. Under Richard, such suggestions from floor staff would have been ignored. Now, they were actively encouraged, with successful innovations earning bonuses and recognition. "Write it up and send it to Emma's team," I told her. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need." As I headed back to my office, I reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. The company's stock price had risen 40%. Employee turnover had dropped to its lowest level in a decade. Our sustainability initiatives were earning industry awards. But the real victory wasn't in the numbers. It was in the transformation of a company culture from one of fear and stagnation to one of innovation and collaboration. It was in the pride I saw on employees' faces, the energy in our meetings, the flood of new ideas coming from all levels of the organization. My phone buzzed again, this time a message from Patricia, Richard's wife. After months of silence, she was reaching out. "Alex, can we talk? Richard's not doing well." I considered ignoring it, but Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. "Success without compassion is just another form of failure." "Lunch tomorrow?" I texted back. "The usual place?" Her response was immediate. "Thank you." I put the phone away, turning my attention to the stack of proposals on my desk. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, I had work to do. After all, a legacy isn't just something you inherit, it's something you build on, one decision at a time. And somewhere, I knew, Grandpa was still watching, that knowing smile on his face, proud that his true successor had been hiding in plain sight all along.
I never expected my life to unravel on what should have been the most romantic moment of my existence. But there I stood on the edge of Sunset Cliff, with my boyfriend Nate down on one knee, holding up a ring that caught the dying sunlight like a warning flare. "My name is Maddie, and I should have listened to that warning." "Madison Carter," Nate said, his voice trembling slightly. "Will you marry me?" The ocean waves crashed below us, and a gust of wind whipped my hair across my face. I brushed it away, trying to focus on the man I loved, but something felt off. The timing, the location, none of it made sense. We had plans to discuss our future next month, after I finished my big project at work. Nate knew how much I valued careful planning. Yes, I heard myself say, even as my stomach twisted into knots. Of course, yes. Nate's face lit up as he slipped the ring onto my finger. It was beautiful, vintage style with intricate details, exactly the kind of ring his mother Maggie would choose. That should have been my second warning. "I couldn't wait any longer," Nate said, pulling me into an embrace. Mom helped me pick out the ring last week. She's going to be so excited. Of course she would be. Maggie Thompson had been dropping hints about marriage since our third date. I forced a smile, trying to push away the realization that Nate had planned this life-changing moment with his mother, instead of considering what I might want. "Did you tell your mom before you proposed?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Nate's slight hesitation told me everything. Well, you know how she is. She wanted to be involved, and honestly, she had some great ideas about the proposal. She even suggested this spot. The sunset suddenly felt less romantic and more like nature's countdown timer. I glanced at my phone. 3 missed calls from Maggie already. My engagement wasn't even an hour old, and she was already asserting control. "We should head back," Nate said, checking his own phone. Mom's arranged a surprise celebration dinner at La Maison. La Maison, Maggie's favorite restaurant, where she knew all the staff by name and always got the best table. Not the casual pizza place where Nate and I had our first date, or the cozy cafe where we spent Sunday mornings planning our future. "Actually," I said, "I thought maybe we could celebrate just the 2 of us first. Maybe grab a drink at Murphy's." Nate's face fell slightly. "Mom's already made the reservations. Everyone's waiting for us. Everyone." Which meant Maggie had already assembled her entire social circle to witness her triumph. I could picture it perfectly. Her holding court at the head of the table, showing off her future daughter-in-law like a prize poodle at a dog show. "Right," I said, forcing another smile. "Of course." As we walked back to the car, Nate chatted excitedly about the future. But all I could think about was how quickly my carefully ordered world was spinning out of control. I'm a financial analyst. I plan things. I calculate risks. I create spreadsheets for grocery shopping, for heaven's sake. Yet here I was, being swept along in Maggie Thompson's grand plan for her only son's perfect wedding. My phone buzzed again, Maggie, of course. But there was also a text from my best friend Sarah. "Did it happen? Are you okay? Call me ASAP." I typed back quickly, engaged. "Tell you everything later." Sarah's response was immediate. "Congratulations? Question mark intended. Wine tomorrow." I smiled at my phone, feeling a little steadier. At least someone understood my complicated feelings about this moment. As we pulled into La Maison's parking lot, I could see Maggie's elegant figure waiting at the entrance, practically vibrating with excitement. She was already waving, already moving forward to claim her role in our story. I touched the ring on my finger, wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life, or if I was simply being paranoid about my future mother-in-law's enthusiasm. I was about to find out exactly how wrong I was on both counts. The bridal boutique's lighting was harsh, making everything look too bright, too real. I sat in the bride's throne, a ridiculous velvet chair Maggie had insisted was traditional, watching my simple wedding dreams dissolve into a cloud of tulle and expectations. "Darling, you simply must try the Valentina gown," Maggie called out, her voice carrying that silk-wrapped steel tone I was growing to dread. "It's absolutely perfect for a Thompson wedding." I caught Sarah's eye across the room. My best friend gave me a subtle eye roll that made me want to laugh and cry simultaneously. We'd spent weeks creating my wedding Pinterest board. Clean lines, minimal fuss, elegant simplicity. Everything the Valentina gown, with its cathedral train and enough beating to sink a small ship, wasn't. "I was thinking something more understated," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Maybe the Jenny we saw online?" Maggie's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Oh, sweetie, that's lovely for a backyard wedding, but we're having 300 guests at the Grand Plaza. You need something that makes a statement." 300 guests. My stomach lurched. I thought Nate and I agreed on a smaller wedding? Maybe 150 max. "Nathaniel understands the importance of family obligations," Maggie said, expertly flicking through another rack of gowns. "The Thompsons have connections throughout the city. We can't possibly exclude anyone." I pulled out my phone, typing quickly to Nate. "We need to talk about the guest list. Your mom's talking 300 people now." His response came quickly, "Whatever makes you both happy," smiling face with smiling eyes. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Whatever makes you both happy." As if my happiness and his mother's were somehow equivalent. As if he couldn't see the growing chasm between those two concepts. "Here," Maggie announced triumphantly, holding up what appeared to be the love child of a wedding dress and a Christmas tree. "This is absolutely perfect." Sarah stepped forward, finally breaking her diplomatic silence. Maybe we should take a break? Get some lunch, clear our heads. Nonsense, Maggie said. We have appointments at 3 more boutiques today. The perfect dress won't wait, and we only have 8 months until the wedding. 8 months that suddenly felt like a countdown to my own execution. I stood up, my legs shaky. I need some air. Outside, the spring breeze felt like salvation. Sarah followed me, pulling a pack of cigarettes from her purse, a habit she'd supposedly quit years ago. Want one? She asked, lighting up. I shook my head, then changed my mind. Actually, yes. We stood in silence, watching the smoke drift away. Finally, Sarah spoke. You know you can say no, right? To any of this. To all of this. Can I? I laughed, but it came out hollow. You should see the spreadsheet Maggie made. Every minute of the next 8 months is planned. She's already put deposits down on half the vendors. With whose money? Sarah's question hit like a punch to the gut. I don't know, I realized. I should know that, shouldn't I? I'm a financial analyst, for God's sake. The boutique door chimed. Maggie emerged, her face a perfect mask of concern. Girls, we're going to be late for our next appointment. Madison, darling, I've pulled some options I think you'll love. As we followed her to her Mercedes, my phone buzzed again. A text from Nate. Mom says you're being difficult about the dress. Please try to work with her. She knows what she's doing. I stopped walking, staring at the message. Sarah bumped into me, then read over my shoulder. Oh hell no, she muttered. I looked up at Maggie's retreating back, then at my engagement ring, the ring she'd chosen. For the first time, I noticed how heavy it felt on my finger, like a beautifully decorated handcuff. Coming, dear, Maggie called, already sliding into the driver's seat. I took a deep breath, tasting the last of the cigarette's rebellion on my tongue. Yes, I said, but in my mind, I was already calculating something else entirely, the cost of saying no, and whether I could afford to pay it. The morning of my wedding day, I stared at my reflection in the bridal suite mirror, barely recognizing myself beneath the elaborate updo and heavy makeup Maggie had insisted upon. The Valentina gown she'd chosen felt like armor, beautiful, suffocating armor that cost more than my first car. 5 minutes until the ceremony. Maggie's voice rang through the door. Everyone in position. Sarah caught my eye in the mirror. You okay? You look a little green. I wasn't okay. The guest list had somehow swelled to 350 people, most of whom I'd never met. The simple string quartet I'd wanted had been replaced by a 20-piece orchestra. Even my father's traditional father-daughter dance song had been vetoed in favor of something more sophisticated. I need a minute, I said, heading for the attached bathroom. Just stall if you need to. Inside, I gripped the marble countertop, trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed, a text from Nate. Can't wait to see you. Mom says you'll look perfect. Of course she did. She'd orchestrated every detail, down to the shade of nail polish on my fingers. I looked down at my hands and noticed something that made my stomach lurch. My grandmother's simple gold bracelet, the one I'd planned to wear, was missing. I rushed back into the suite. Has anyone seen my bracelet? The one from Gran. Oh, I removed it earlier, Maggie said, sweeping in with a velvet box. It didn't quite match the aesthetic. But look what Nathaniel and I picked out instead. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet that probably cost more than my grandmother's entire jewelry collection. The sight of it made me feel sick. Where did you put my bracelet? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. It's safe in my purse, dear. We can discuss it after the ceremony. Speaking of which, I want it now. The words came out sharper than I'd intended. Maggie's perfect smile flickered. Madison, darling, we don't have time for this. The guests are waiting. 350 strangers can wait 5 more minutes. I held out my hand. The bracelet, please. The room went silent. Sarah moved closer to me, while the other bridesmaids, all Maggie's choices, shifted uncomfortably. I don't understand why you're being difficult about this, Maggie said. Everything is perfect. Everything is exactly as it should be. As it should be for whom? I asked. Because none of this, not the dress, not the venue, not even the damn flower arrangements, is what Nate and I planned. Nathaniel understands the importance of maintaining certain standards. Nathaniel understands doing whatever you want to avoid conflict. The words exploded out of me, shocking everyone, including myself. My phone buzzed again. Nate, where are you? Mom's getting worried. That's when it hit me, he hadn't even asked if I was okay. Hadn't checked if I needed anything. His only concern was his mother's anxiety. Sarah, I said quietly, could you help me out of this dress? Madison. Maggie's voice rose sharply. Don't you dare. It's still my wedding day. I cut her off, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. And for once, I'm making a decision about it. I turned to Sarah, who was already working on the buttons of the Valentina gown. Call my dad, please. Tell him to meet me at the side entrance. You can't do this to Nathaniel, Maggie said, her composure cracking. Think about his reputation, his position in the community. I stepped out of the dress, standing in my slip while Sarah handed me the jeans and sweater I'd worn to the venue. I have been thinking. About Nate, about our future, about who's really in control of both. My phone buzzed one final time. Nate again, Mom's really upset. Please don't ruin this day for her. I slipped my grandmother's bracelet off Maggie's wrist while she stood there, too shocked to resist. As I fastened it around my own wrist, I felt its familiar weight, not like a handcuff at all, but like an anchor to who I really was. Tell Nate, I said, heading for the door, that his mother's day isn't ruined. She can keep everything. The venue, the orchestra, even the 300 guests. She just can't keep me. 3 weeks after walking out of my own wedding, I came home to find Maggie reorganizing my kitchen. She stood in the middle of my apartment, surrounded by open cabinets and displaced appliances, while Nate hovered nearby with a box of his mother's essential cooking tools. The renovation company found asbestos, Nate said quickly before I could speak. Mom needs to stay with us for a few weeks. I set my laptop bag down carefully, noting how they'd already pushed my carefully curated furniture around to accommodate Maggie's antique armchair, the one that now occupied my reading nook. A few weeks, I repeated, watching Maggie replace my organized spice rack with her own crystal jars. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? Darling, it was an emergency, Maggie said, not looking up from her task. And really, this kitchen needed a proper woman's touch. These modern organizing systems lack soul. My fingers twitched. That modern organizing system had taken me a full weekend to perfect. Nate, can we talk? Privately. In our bedroom, the only space still untouched by Hurricane Maggie, Nate immediately went on the defensive. I couldn't just leave her without a place to stay. She's my mother. That's not the point, I said, keeping my voice low. We're supposed to be working on our communication, remember? That's why we postponed the wedding instead of canceling it. I know, but a crash from the kitchen cut him off. We both rushed out to find my grandmother's ceramic cookie jar in pieces on the floor. Oh dear, Maggie said, looking more annoyed than apologetic. These shelves are so impractically arranged. But don't worry, I brought my Royal Doulton set to replace it. I stared at the shattered pieces, the last gift my grandmother had given me before she died. Nate touched my arm. It was an accident, Maddie. Mom didn't mean. Stop making excuses for her, I snapped, pulling away. Just once. I'd like you to acknowledge when she crosses a line. Madison. Maggie's voice took on that familiar steel edge. I understand you're upset, but this hostility isn't helpful. We're family now, and families support each other through difficult times. Family. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Family doesn't bulldoze boundaries. Family asks permission before moving in. Family respects. My phone buzzed, a notification from my banking app. I opened it, then froze. Nate, why is there a $5,000 withdrawal from our joint account? The guilty look that passed between mother and son made my blood run cold. Mom needed help with the contractor's deposit, Nate mumbled. I was going to tell you. When? I demanded. After she redecorated our entire apartment? After she replaced everything I own with things she deems appropriate. Now you're just being dramatic, Maggie said, already unpacking another box of her belongings. Nathaniel understands the importance of family obligations. Perhaps if your own mother had been around longer. Get out. The words came out quiet but firm. Excuse me. Maggie's eyebrows shot up. Both of you. Get out. I moved to the door, opening it wide. Take your Royal Doulton and your family obligations and get out of my apartment. Maddie, please. Nate started, but I cut him off. You can stay at your mother's house, the one that mysteriously needs renovations despite looking perfect when we had dinner there last week. Maggie's face flushed. Nate's eyes widened as the implication hit him. You planned this, I said, the realization settling like ice in my stomach. The asbestos, the emergency, all of it. Another attempt to control our lives. Madison, Maggie began, but I held up my hand. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the joint account tomorrow, I said, my analyst's brain already calculating the next steps. For now, please leave before I call building security. As they gathered their things, Maggie protesting, Nate pleading, I stood by the door, my grandmother's broken cookie jar at my feet. Each piece felt like a fragment of the future I'd thought I wanted, shattered by the weight of expectations and control I'd never asked for. But this time, I wouldn't let anyone else pick up the pieces and rearrange them to their liking. This time, I'd decide what to salvage and what to leave broken. The bank statement spread across my dining table told a story that made my stomach churn. Over the past 3 months, nearly $30,000 had quietly disappeared from our joint account through small, recurring transfers. Each one labeled innocuously home improvement, family investment, emergency fund. I was supposed to be the financial analyst. How had I missed this? My phone buzzed, Nate's 5th call today. I let it go to voicemail, focusing instead on highlighting another suspicious transaction. The front door clicked open, and I heard his familiar footsteps. Maddie? Can we talk? Nate's voice carried that pleading tone I'd grown to hate. Mom's really upset about yesterday, and I think if we all just sit down. Interesting choice of words, I said, not looking up. Sitting down. That's what I've been doing for the last 4 hours, looking at our bank statements. The silence that followed was deafening. I can explain, he started. These transfers, I cut him off, finally meeting his eyes. They started the day after I walked out of the wedding. Every week, like clockwork. Did you think I wouldn't notice? He shifted uncomfortably. Mom needed help with her mortgage. After Dad died, things got complicated. Your father died 3 years ago, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. And your mother's house is paid off. I did the paperwork myself, remember? Nate's face flushed. She's investing in a new business venture. Something to keep her occupied. Stop lying. I stood up, pushing the statements toward him. I called the account numbers. They all lead to a private investment portfolio in her name. One that's been actively trading with our money. Our money, he repeated, a hint of defiance creeping into his voice. Exactly. We're supposed to be partners, Maddie. Family helps family. Partners communicate, I shot back. Partners don't steal from each other. It's not stealing when we share everything. His voice rose. You're so obsessed with control, with your spreadsheets and budgets. Maybe if you'd been more flexible about the wedding. The wedding I paid for? I laughed bitterly. The one your mother turned into her personal showcase while you stood by and watched. My phone buzzed again, Maggie's number this time. I picked it up and declined the call, then noticed a new email notification. From my bank. Another transfer just went through, I said, opening the alert. $10,000. 10 minutes ago. Nate's expression shifted from defensive to panicked. Mom said she needed it for what? I stepped closer, showing him the screen. What could possibly justify emptying our account without even asking me? He wouldn't meet my eyes. She said it was insurance. In case you tried to leave again. The words hit me like a physical blow. Insurance, I repeated. Against me leaving. So you gave her our savings. She's trying to protect us. Nate's voice cracked. She knows what's best. Get out. The words came out barely above a whisper. Maddie, please. Get out. I slammed my hand on the table, making the papers jump. Take your protection and your lies and get out. I'm done. He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. You don't mean that. We can work this out. Mom says. Your mother, I cut in, my voice deadly calm, has been manipulating both of us from the start. And you let her. But here's what's going to happen now. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm freezing all our joint accounts. And I'm filing charges for financial fraud. You wouldn't, he whispered. It would destroy Mom's reputation. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw for the first time how small he seemed without his mother's shadow to hide in. "You're right," I said, gathering the statements into a folder. "I wouldn't destroy her reputation. I'm going to let her do that herself. Every transaction, every manipulation, every lie, it's all here in black and white. And numbers don't lie, Nate. Even when people do." As he finally turned to leave, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it had company. A cold, calculated determination that felt surprisingly like freedom. The cease and desist letter from Maggie's lawyer arrived the same morning my boss called me into his office. I knew something was wrong when I saw the Thompson Financial Group logo on his computer screen. "Madison," he said, not quite meeting my eyes, "we need to discuss a potential conflict of interest." My stomach dropped. Maggie's company was one of our firm's biggest clients. Of course, she'd find a way to hit me where it hurt most. Charles Thompson called personally. My boss continued, shuffling papers on his desk. "He's concerned about sensitive financial information, given your personal situation with his sister-in-law." "I've never handled their accounts," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I made sure of that when Nate and I got engaged. It's not about what you've done. It's about what you might do." He slid a document across the desk. "They're requesting your immediate removal from any projects that could potentially intersect with their interests." I scanned the paper, my analyst's brain automatically calculating the impact. Half my current clients had some connection to Thompson Financial. My carefully built career was being dismantled, spreadsheet by spreadsheet. "This is retaliation," I said, "for the fraud charges I'm filing." "Madison," he sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "Drop the charges. Take a leave of absence. Let this blow over." My phone buzzed, another text from Nate. "Mom's lawyer says they'll drop everything if you just apologize. Please, Maddie. This is getting out of hand. Getting out of hand." Like I was a child throwing a tantrum, not someone whose life savings had been stolen by her future mother-in-law. "I need to think about it," I told my boss, standing up on shaky legs. Outside his office, I ran straight into Emily Foster, an old college friend who'd recently joined the firm. She steadied me, then noticed my face. "Maddie? What's wrong?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. My landlord. "Miss Carter? We've received some concerning information about your rental history." I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what I'd hear. Maggie's reach was apparently endless, her revenge methodical and thorough. "They're trying to destroy me," I whispered, more to myself than Emily. "Who is?" Emily asked, pulling me into an empty conference room. I told her everything. The wedding, the stolen money, Maggie's escalating attacks. Emily listened, then pulled out her laptop. "Show me the numbers," she said simply. For the next hour, we pieced together the trail of transactions, the pattern of financial manipulation. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized something in the data. "This isn't just about you," she said finally. "These investment patterns, I've seen them before. In fraud cases I worked on at my old firm." Hope flickered briefly, then died as my phone buzzed with another email. My bank account had been frozen pending investigation. "It doesn't matter," I said, closing the laptop. "She's won. I can't fight her without money, without a job, without playing by her rules," Emily finished. She hesitated, then pulled out a business card. "I have a friend at the SEC. These transactions? They're part of a bigger pattern. One the Securities and Exchange Commission might be very interested in." I stared at the card, remembering Maggie's words from months ago. Family protects family. But family doesn't destroy what it claims to love. My phone buzzed one final time, a text from Sarah. "Your dad's here. Says Maggie's people contacted his school board. Come home. Now." The card trembled in my hand as fury replaced fear. Maggie hadn't just attacked me. She'd gone after my father, the one person who'd always supported me unconditionally. "Make the call," I told Emily, my voice hard as steel. "It's time to show Maggie Thompson what real protection looks like." I'd wanted revenge. But now, looking at the evidence of years of financial manipulation spread across the conference table, I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice, not just for me, but for everyone Maggie had ever controlled, manipulated, or destroyed. and I was done playing defense. The SEC investigation hit the morning news like a thunderbolt. I watched from my father's living room as Maggie Thompson's carefully constructed world crumbled on live television. Federal agents escorted her from the Thompson financial offices while reporters shouted questions about years of systematic fraud. My phone lit up with a text from Emily. They found everything. The shell companies, the hidden accounts. It's bigger than we thought. Then came Nate's call. For once, I answered. How could you do this to her? His voice cracked. She's your family. No, I said quietly. She was your excuse. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Nate on my father's porch, phone still pressed to his ear. I opened the door but stayed behind the threshold. She's facing federal charges, Maddie. His eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. They're talking about prison time. Real prison. I know. I kept my voice steady. I've seen the numbers, Nate. All of them. Not just what she took from us, but from dozens of other families. Their retirement funds, their savings, their futures. She was trying to protect us. He stepped forward, but I held my ground. Protect us? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. By stealing our money? By threatening my father's career? By destroying everything and everyone who didn't fit into her perfect plan? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I pulled out my phone, showing him the spreadsheet Emily and I had compiled. These aren't just numbers, Nate. They're people. Real people your mother convinced to trust her with their life savings, just like she convinced you to trust her with ours. His face crumpled as he scrolled through the data. This can't be right. Mom wouldn't. She did. And you helped her. I took back my phone. Every time you chose her control over our future, every time you let her decide what was best for us, you helped her take a little more. I can fix this, he said, running his hands through his hair. If you drop the charges, tell them it was a misunderstanding. It's too late. I stepped onto the porch, finally facing him at eye level. The SEC has everything. Bank records, witness statements, your mother's own paper trail. She got sloppy, Nate. Too used to getting her way. Then why are you here? He gestured at my father's house. Why aren't you home? Because this is what real family looks like. I pointed through the window where my father sat with Sarah, sorting through job applications. They're helping me rebuild what your mother tried to destroy. No conditions, no control, no perfect plan, just love. I love you, he whispered. Isn't that enough? No. The word came easily now. Because you never loved me more than you feared her. His phone buzzed. Maggie's lawyer, probably. Mine buzzed too, Emily, with updates about the investigation. Two worlds colliding in our pocket-sized devices. She'll lose everything, Nate said, staring at his phone. She already did. I touched his arm gently. The moment she decided control was more important than love. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Perhaps for the first time seeing the woman I'd become instead of the one his mother had tried to shape. I don't know how to fix this, he admitted. That's the point, Nate. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be finished. I stepped back inside, my hand on the door. Goodbye, Nate. I hope you find your own way out of her shadow. As I closed the door, I heard him start to speak. But whatever he said was lost in the sound of my father's wind chimes, the ones my mother had hung years ago, before cancer took her. Their gentle music reminded me that endings weren't always about revenge or justice. Sometimes they were simply about finding the courage to write your own story, even when others tried to control the narrative. Inside, Sarah handed me a cup of coffee and a stack of job listings. My father squeezed my shoulder. And for the first time in months, I felt truly, completely free. 1 year later, I stood at Sunset Cliff again, watching waves crash against rocks that had seen countless promises made and broken. The irony wasn't lost on me, returning to where my story with Nate began, only to find myself more complete without him. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Margaret Thompson sentenced in multi-million-dollar fraud case. I didn't need to read it. Emily had already texted me the details. 8 years, with possibility of parole. Justice served in neat, numerical packages. Just the way I liked it. Thought I'd find you here, Sarah's voice carried over the wind. She handed me a coffee and leaned against the railing. Celebrating. I considered the question, watching a seabird dive into the waves below. Not celebrating. Just acknowledging. Nate called the gallery yesterday, she said carefully. Asked if you'd be at the opening. My new collection of financial photography. Stark, beautiful images of spreadsheets transformed into abstract art was debuting next week. A collaboration with Sarah that had started as therapy and evolved into something unexpectedly successful. What did you tell him? That his RSVP was declined. She bumped my shoulder. Some doors need to stay closed. My father's voice echoed in my memory from the night I'd left Nate. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. Sometimes it's about letting yourself move forward. A jogger passed us and I recognized Emily, who waved but didn't stop. She'd become a regular part of our lives, her precise analytical mind balancing Sarah's artistic chaos in ways that made our friendship feel complete. The SEC wants me to consult on similar cases, I said, watching Emily disappear around the curve. Apparently, my unique personal insight could help identify other financial predators. Sarah grinned. Look at you, turning revenge into a career opportunity. Not revenge, I corrected. Protection. For people who don't know they need it yet. My phone buzzed again, a text from my new firm, confirming Monday's client meeting. After the Thompson scandal, several boutique financial firms had courted me, impressed by my role in uncovering the fraud. I'd chosen the smallest one, where client relationships were built on trust rather than tradition. You know what's funny? I said, finishing my coffee. Maggie always said I was too controlling, too focused on numbers and plans. But in the end, that's exactly what set me free. Speaking of plans, Sarah pulled an envelope from her bag. Your dad asked me to give you this. Inside was a key and a note in my father's careful handwriting. For when you're ready. Mom would have wanted you to have it. The key to my mother's art studio. The space he'd kept locked since her death, preserving her half-finished paintings and dreams. He'd always said he was waiting for the right moment to open it again. He says you've found your balance, Sarah explained. Between the numbers that keep us safe and the chaos that keeps us growing. A year ago, I would have analyzed this moment, calculated the risks and rewards of accepting such an emotionally charged gift. Now, I simply slipped the key onto my keyring, letting it settle among the others that marked my new life. Want to help me clean it out this weekend? I asked Sarah. Clean it out. She raised an eyebrow. Or set up your new home office? I smiled, remembering how my mother used to say creativity and calculation were just different languages for the same truth. Maybe both. I think there's room for spreadsheets among the easels. As we walked back to our cars, I paused for one last look at the cliff where Nate had proposed. The setting sun painted the ocean in shades of possibility, reminding me that some leaps aren't about falling or flying, they're about finally finding solid ground beneath your feet. Ready? Sarah called. I touched my mother's key, feeling its potential warm against my palm. Yeah, I said, turning away from the cliff. I'm ready, not for an ending, but for whatever came next. After all, the best calculations always leave room for surprise.
I never thought my life would change because of a vintage Hermes scarf, but that's exactly what happened last spring at Second Chance's thrift store. My name is Felicity, and I probably spend way too much time hunting for hidden fashion treasures between racks of other people's cast-offs. But this particular Thursday was different. I had just spotted the distinctive orange box peeking out from under a pile of scarves when another hand reached for it at the same time. Oh, sorry. A deep voice chuckled. Ladies first. I looked up to find myself staring into the warmest brown eyes I'd ever seen. The guy was tall, with slightly messy dark hair and a camera slung around his neck. He had that artsy vibe that always made my heart skip a beat. No, please, go ahead, I said, trying to sound casual while my pulse did a little dance. I was just being nosy anyway. Actually, I could use a second opinion. He picked up the box and carefully opened it. Inside was a pristine silk scarf in swirling shades of blue and gold. I'm doing a vintage-inspired photo shoot tomorrow, but I know nothing about fashion. Is this something special? That's a genuine Hermes scarf from the 1960s, I said, unable to hide my excitement. See the hand-rolled edges and the artist's signature? It's probably worth at least $500. His eyebrows shot up. And it's priced at $15? How do you know all this? I'm a bit of a fashion nerd. I can spot designer pieces from across the room. I smiled. I'm Felicity. Nolan Brooks, he said, extending his hand. Fashion nerd meets photography nerd. Would you maybe want to grab a coffee and tell me more about vintage fashion? I could really use your expertise for this shoot. That's how it started. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner turned into dating, and 3 months later I was head over heels in love with Nolan. Everything was perfect until I met his sister Celeste. The first time was at their parents' house for Sunday dinner. I'd spent hours choosing the perfect outfit, a vintage Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress I'd scored for $30. Nolan's parents, Evelyn and Gerald, were warm and welcoming, but Celeste's smile never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, how creative of you to wear secondhand clothes," she said, sipping her wine. "I could never." "Who knows where they've been?" "Celeste," Evelyn warned, but her daughter just shrugged. "I'm just saying, if you're going to be part of the Brooks family, you might want to consider upgrading your wardrobe. We have certain standards to maintain." I felt my cheeks burn as Nolan squeezed my hand under the table. Actually, Felicity has an amazing eye for fashion. She's helping style my upcoming magazine shoot. Really? Celeste's perfectly manicured eyebrows arched. How interesting. I just got engaged to Marcus Hale, of Hale Industries. We're planning the wedding of the season. Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was Nolan's sister, after all. I needed to make this work. Later that night, as Nolan drove me home, I caught him glancing at me worriedly. "I'm sorry about Celeste. She can be intense sometimes." "It's fine," I said, even though it wasn't. "She's probably just protective of her family." What I didn't say was how I'd seen Celeste watching me throughout dinner, studying every move I made, every word I spoke. I didn't mention how she'd cornered me in the kitchen and grilled me about my background, my job, my plans for the future. And I definitely didn't tell Nolan about the way she'd smiled when I mentioned wanting a small, intimate wedding someday, a smile that made me feel like I'd just handed her ammunition. I had no idea then that this was just the beginning, that Celeste Brooks was about to turn my life into her own personal chess game. But looking back now, I should have seen it coming. After all, the best vintage pieces always come with a history, and some of them hide dark secrets beneath their beautiful surfaces. The next few weeks were a blur of family dinners and forced smiles. I kept telling myself things would get better with Celeste, but each interaction left me feeling more like an outsider. Tonight was supposed to be different, a casual barbecue at the Brooks house to celebrate Nolan's latest magazine cover. I arrived early to help Evelyn in the kitchen, wearing a vintage Chanel blazer I'd restored myself. As I chopped vegetables, she touched the fabric admiringly. "You have such a gift, Felicity. The way you bring these pieces back to life." She paused, glancing toward the door. "I hope you know that, Gerald, and I think you're wonderful for Nolan." Before I could respond, Celeste swept in wearing what looked like this season's entire Gucci collection. "Mother, Marcus is bringing his parents tonight. Did you remember to get the expensive wine I asked for?" "I thought this was just a family dinner," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Celeste's laugh was like ice crackling. "Oh, didn't Nolan tell you?" I turned it into an engagement celebration. Marcus's father is thinking of featuring Nolan's photography in their company's new campaign. She touched my blazer. "Is this secondhand? How brave of you." I felt my jaw tighten, but before I could respond, Nolan appeared, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Hey, beautiful. That blazer looks amazing on you." "It should," Celeste said. "The real thing costs about $12,000. She turned to her mother. "We need to set up the formal dining room instead of eating outside. The Hales aren't exactly barbecue people." I watched Evelyn's face fall. She'd spent all day preparing Nolan's favorite grilled dishes. But Nolan understands how important this is for the family, don't you? Celeste's tone was sweet, but her eyes were sharp as she looked at her brother. Maybe we could do both, he suggested, already backing down. Set up inside but keep some food on the grill? I felt my heart sink as Evelyn quietly began moving dishes inside. This was supposed to be Nolan's celebration, but somehow Celeste had hijacked it, just like she seemed to be doing with everything else in our lives. During dinner, I found myself seated between Marcus's mother, who kept asking if my blazer was some kind of costume, and Celeste, who took every opportunity to mention the exclusive designer boutiques she was considering for her wedding dress. Of course, Felicity probably has some creative ideas for her own wedding, Celeste said suddenly, turning to me. What were you thinking? Something vintage, I assume? Table went quiet. Nolan and I hadn't even discussed marriage yet. I felt my face heat up as everyone waited for my response. I haven't really. Oh, that's right, Celeste interrupted. You haven't set a date yet, or even gotten engaged. She patted my hand. Don't worry, when it happens, I'll help you plan everything. After all, I'll have plenty of experience after my wedding. Gerald cleared his throat. Celeste, perhaps we could focus on celebrating Nolan's achievement tonight? Of course, Daddy. Celeste raised her glass. To Nolan's success and to family. Later, as guests were leaving, I overheard Celeste talking to Marcus in the hallway. Poor thing, she tries so hard to fit in. But you can't buy class, can you? I mean, showing up in secondhand clothes to meet your parents? She seemed nice enough, Marcus replied. And that blazer was actually quite elegant. Oh, honey, you're too kind. But trust me, she's not Brooke's material. Nolan will figure that out eventually. I slipped away before they could see me, my hands shaking as I gathered my things. In the kitchen, I found Gerald washing dishes alone. Don't let her get to you, he said quietly, not looking up. Some people mistake cruelty for sophistication. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As I waited for Nolan to drive me home, I caught my reflection in the window, the proud vintage blazer suddenly feeling like a costume. For the first time, I wondered if loving Nolan was worth the price of admission to his world. What I didn't know then was that Celeste was just getting started. And her next move would force me to choose between keeping the peace and keeping my self-respect. The moment everything changed happened at the Brooks family lake house. Nolan had just proposed the night before, a perfect sunset moment that felt like a dream. I should have known better than to think Celeste would let me have even 24 hours of pure happiness. I was helping Evelyn prepare lunch when I realized I'd left my engagement ring upstairs after washing my hands. As I approached Nolan's old bedroom, I heard Celeste's voice floating through the cracked door. It's actually perfect timing, she was saying. Now I can use all of Felicity's wedding ideas for my own. She'll never suspect I've been collecting them for months. I froze, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Are you sure that's necessary? It was Marcus's voice, sounding uncertain. Your brother just got engaged. Oh, please, their wedding will be some quirky vintage affair. I'm doing everyone a favor by elevating her ideas into something actually sophisticated. Besides, Nolan's been telling me everything, her dress design, the venue she wants, even the antique lace she found for the veil. My stomach lurched. I'd shared those details with Nolan in private moments, dreaming together about our future. He'd promised they were our secrets. Speaking of which, Celeste continued, I already called her dream venue and booked it for the weekend before their date. The deposit cleared this morning. Won't that seem obvious? Marcus asked. That's the beauty of it. She'll look crazy if she accuses me of copying her. After all, I'm the one getting married first now. Everyone will think she's the one copying me. I must have made a sound because the conversation stopped abruptly. I hurried back downstairs, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip the railing. In the kitchen, Nolan was helping his mother with the salad. He smiled when he saw me, but it faded when he noticed my expression. Hey, what's wrong? Can we talk? My voice sounded strange, even to me. Privately. Side on the deck, the lake sparkled mockingly in the summer sun. I turned to face him, fighting to keep my voice steady. Have you been telling Celeste about our wedding plans? Well, yeah, she's been really interested lately. She said she wants to help. He looked confused. Isn't that a good thing? She's planning to steal everything, Nolan. I just heard her talking to Marcus. She's already booked our venue for her wedding, the one I showed you in secret. His face went through a series of emotions: surprise, doubt, defense. Come on, that's got to be a misunderstanding. Celeste wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Deliberately try to hurt me? That's all she's done since we met. The words burst out before I could stop them. You're overreacting, he said, using that placating tone that suddenly made me want to scream. She's my sister, Felicity. She's just excited about weddings right now. Just then, Celeste appeared in the doorway, wearing a concerned expression that made my skin crawl. Is everything okay out here? I thought I heard raised voices. Did you book the Riverside Manor for your wedding? I asked directly. Oh, that. She smiled brightly. Yes, isn't it perfect? I remembered how much you loved it when you mentioned it at dinner last month. I hope you don't mind. Great minds think alike, right? I looked at Nolan, waiting for him to say something to defend me. He shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we could all just what? I interrupted, slipping off my engagement ring. Just pretend this isn't happening? Just let her steal every piece of our wedding like she's been planning for months? Felicity, don't be dramatic, Celeste said, her voice dripping with fake concern. If you're not ready to plan a wedding, just say so. I placed the ring on the deck railing, my vision blurring with tears of rage. You're right. I'm not ready. Not for this family, not for a husband who won't stand up for me. And definitely not for a sister-in-law who treats my life like it's her personal shopping catalog. As I walked away, I heard Nolan call my name, but it was Celeste's voice that followed me. See? I told you she wasn't Brooke's material. I got in my car and drove, not knowing then that this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of my awakening. 3 days after leaving the lake house, I found myself sorting through vintage dresses at work when Gerald Brooks walked into my shop. He looked out of place among the racks of second-hand clothes, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the worn wooden floors. Interesting place you have here, he said, running his finger along a 1950s Dior dress. Evelyn mentioned you restore these? I nodded, unable to find my voice. Was he here to convince me to come back? To defend Celeste? Nolan's been miserable, he continued, but his tone wasn't accusatory. Though I suspect that's not entirely about losing you. What do you mean? The Hales pulled their advertising campaign. Apparently, Marcus had some concerns about working with our family. He picked up a vintage brooch from the display case. Celeste is blaming you, of course. My hands stilled on the dress I was mending. I haven't spoken to Marcus. No, but he's not blind. Or stupid. Gerald set the brooch down carefully. He came by the house yesterday, asking questions about Celeste's sudden interest in vintage weddings and unique venues. Before I could respond, the shop door chimed. Nolan walked in, stopping short when he saw his father. Dad? What are you doing here? Just leaving, actually. Gerald squeezed my shoulder as he passed. Remember what I said about authenticity, Felicity. Some things can't be copied no matter how hard people try. After he left, Nolan and I stood in uncomfortable silence. He looked tired, his usually perfect hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. You left your ring, he said finally. You left me to face your sister alone. He winced. I talked to her. She agreed to change her wedding venue. That's not the point, Nolan. I picked up a damaged silk scarf, focusing on the torn edges rather than his face. She's been systematically trying to destroy anything good in my life, and you've been helping her do it. She's my sister, and I was supposed to be your wife. My voice cracked on the last word. But you couldn't even tell her to back off when she was literally stealing our wedding plans. I didn't think, he stopped, frustrated. Look, I brought something to show you. He pulled out his phone, showing me a series of texts from Celeste. My stomach turned as I read them, detailed questions about my wedding ideas, our private conversations, even photos she'd asked him to take of my design sketches. See? She was just excited about wedding planning. She wanted to help. I stared at him, realizing with sudden clarity that he truly couldn't see what was right in front of him. Or worse, he didn't want to. Your father said Marcus pulled the advertising campaign, I said quietly. Did you ever wonder why? Nolan's face clouded. Celeste said you must have said something to him. Of course she did. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. And you believed her just like you always do. The shop door chimed again. This time it was Marcus himself, looking uncomfortable but determined. Sorry to interrupt, he said. Felicity, could we talk? About Celeste. Nolan stepped between us. Whatever she told you about my sister. She hasn't told me anything, Marcus cut in. That's why I'm here. I need to know if I'm making a mistake trusting Celeste. The irony of the moment wasn't lost on me, Celeste's fiancé coming to me for the truth while her own brother stood there defending her lies. I looked at Nolan, giving him one last chance. Do you want to tell him about the texts? About how your sister has been planning to steal my wedding piece by piece? Nolan's silence was deafening. I think you should go, I told him, turning away to hide my tears. Both of you. Whatever Celeste is or isn't doing, it's not my problem anymore. As they left, I heard Marcus ask Nolan, Did you really not see what she was doing to Felicity? I didn't hear Nolan's response, but I didn't need to. His silence had already told me everything I needed to know about where his loyalties lay. What I didn't realize then was that Marcus's visit would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything, not just for me and Nolan, but for the entire Brooks family. A week after Marcus's visit to my shop, I received an invitation to Celeste's wedding. Not just any invitation, an exact replica of the custom design I'd sketched in my private journal, the one I'd only ever shown to Nolan. My hands shook as I read the date, exactly 2 weeks before what would have been my wedding day. I was still staring at it when Evelyn called. I know this is awkward, she said, her voice strained. But Celeste insists you come. She says it would mean so much to her. I bet it would. I traced the delicate pattern I'd spent months designing. Did she tell you where she got the invitation design? A long pause. Felicity, please. She's trying to make amends. By stealing my wedding? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Actually, Evelyn hesitated. That's part of why I'm calling. Celeste wants you to help with her dress. She says your vintage expertise would be perfect for the alteration she needs. I almost laughed. What dress? The one she found at that little boutique in Paris. The 1950s Dior you mentioned loving? My stomach dropped. I told Nolan about that dress during a late-night conversation, describing my dream of recreating it for our wedding. Now Celeste had somehow tracked down the original. Can't, I said firmly. Please, Evelyn's voice cracked. Things are so tense in the family. Gerald barely speaks to Nolan, Marcus is asking questions about everything, and Celeste, she's not herself. Maybe if you helped, showed her some kindness. Kindness? I interrupted. Like the kindness she showed me when she systematically stole every detail of my wedding? Or the kindness Nolan showed by helping her do it? The shop door chimed. Celeste walked in, wearing a triumphant smile and carrying a garment bag. I'll call you back, I told Evelyn, hanging up before she could respond. Surprise! Celeste sang out, laying the bag across my counter. I need your magic touch with this. It's a bit delicate and you're the only one I trust. She unzipped the bag, revealing the exact dress I'd dreamed of wearing. The ivory silk was just as beautiful as I'd imagined. How did you find it? I asked, my voice hollow. Oh, Nolan mentioned how much you loved it. I had my connections track it down. She smiled sweetly. Consider this my olive branch. You help me with the alterations, and maybe we can put all this unpleasantness behind us. I stared at her, finally seeing clearly what I should have seen months ago. This wasn't about the wedding at all. This was about power, about breaking me piece by piece. No, I said quietly. Excuse me. I said no. I zipped the garment bag closed. Take your dress and get out of my shop. Her smile vanished. You're being ridiculous. This is my wedding we're talking about. No, this was supposed to be my wedding. My dress. My designs. My dreams. I moved around the counter, anger giving me strength. But you couldn't stand that, could you? You had to take everything just to prove you could. You don't deserve any of it, she hissed, mask finally slipping. You're nothing but a second-hand shop girl who got lucky with my brother. I'm doing him a favor by showing him who you really are. And who are you, Celeste? Besides a thief of other people's dreams? She grabbed the garment bag. You'll regret this. When I'm done, you won't have anything left. Not your designs, not your reputation, and definitely not my brother. As she stormed out, I noticed Marcus standing just outside the shop window, his face dark with anger. He'd heard everything. I should have felt satisfied, knowing Celeste had finally shown her true colors to her fiancé. Instead, I felt empty, because I knew what came next would be worse than anything she'd done so far. Celeste Brooks didn't just want my wedding anymore. She wanted to destroy me completely, and I was running out of ways to stop her. I shouldn't have gone to Celeste's wedding, but something pulled me there, maybe the same instinct that makes people slow down to watch car crashes. I slipped into the church just as the ceremony was starting, staying in the back where shadows could hide me. Everything was mine. The vintage lace draped along the pews, the hand-pressed flower arrangements, even the specific shade of ivory I'd spent months tracking down. But seeing Celeste in my dream dress, that was the final twist of the knife. Beautiful ceremony, isn't it? I jumped. Gerald Brooks stood beside me, his expression unreadable. She stole everything, I whispered. Every single detail. I know. He handed me his phone. On the screen was my original wedding planning journal, photographs of every page. Nolan sent these to her months ago. I found them when I was checking the family cloud storage. My stomach lurched. He gave her everything? He thought he was helping. Gerald's voice was tired. He still doesn't see what she's really doing. The wedding march began to play, the exact vintage recording I discovered in an old record shop. I watched Celeste float down the aisle, wearing my dress, my smile, my dreams. Marcus stood at the altar, his face tight with tension. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something like apology there. Then Celeste reached him, and the ceremony began. I should have left then, but I stayed, watching as the priest asked if anyone had any objections. The silence felt like a physical weight. Then Marcus cleared his throat. I do, he said quietly. I object. Church erupted in whispers. Celeste's face went white. Marcus. Her voice wavered. What are you doing? I can't marry someone who builds their happiness on other people's pain. He turned to face the shocked guests. Everything about this wedding was stolen. The dress, the decorations, even the music. It was all copied from Felicity's plans. Plans that Celeste took without permission. That's ridiculous. Celeste's voice rose shrilly. Nolan, tell them. Nolan stood from his place in the front row, looking confused. I just shared some ideas with you. You said you wanted to help. Help? Marcus laughed bitterly. Is that what you call systematically destroying your brother's relationship? Stealing every detail of his wedding? It's not stealing if he gave them to me. Celeste shouted, mask finally cracking. Besides, I did her a favor. Someone like her doesn't deserve a Brooks family wedding. She's nothing but a second-hand shop girl who has more class and creativity in her little finger than you'll ever have, Gerald interrupted, his voice carrying through the church. And who just watched you reveal your true self to everyone who matters. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around at the shocked faces of the guests, at Marcus's quiet dignity, at Nolan's dawning horror. But it was Celeste's expression that stopped me, cold, pure, undiluted hatred directed straight at me. You, she snarled. You planned this. You turned them all against me. She lunged forward, but instead of coming for me, she grabbed the vintage lace runner from the nearest pew and yanked. Carefully arranged flowers crashed to the floor. In seconds, she was tearing through the decorations like a tornado, destroying everything she'd stolen from me. Celeste, stop. Nolan tried to grab her arm, but she shoved him away. This is all your fault, she screamed at me. You took everything from me, my brother, my fiancé, my family's respect. I'll make sure you never have anything of your own. As security finally pulled her away, I caught Nolan's eye. The guilt and shame on his face should have felt like victory. Instead, I just felt empty. I slipped out during the chaos, but not before I heard Celeste's final threat. This isn't over, Felicity. I'll make you pay for this. Walking home in the fading light, I realized she was right about one thing. It wasn't over. Because now I had to decide. Was protecting myself worth destroying what remained of the Brooks family? And more importantly, could I live with either choice? The answer would change everything, I just didn't know how much yet. The morning after the failed wedding, I found Celeste waiting outside my shop. She wasn't wearing designer clothes anymore, just jeans and a sweater that made her look almost normal. Almost human. We need to talk, she said quietly. I unlocked the door, letting her follow me inside. The shop felt different somehow, like a stage set for whatever was about to happen. I lost everything yesterday, Celeste said, running her finger along a vintage dress rack. Marcus won't return my calls. Mother can barely look at me. Even Nolan. Her voice cracked. I didn't make you do any of it, I said, keeping the counter between us. You chose to steal my wedding plans. You chose to lie. Because you took my brother from me. She whirled around, mask cracking. He was all I had, and you just walked in with your perfect vintage finds and your creative talent and your authenticity. She spat the word like poison. Nolan made his own choices. Did he? She pulled out her phone. Because he's outside right now, ready to choose again. My heart stopped as Nolan walked in, looking trapped between us. Tell her, Celeste demanded. Tell her what you decided. Nolan wouldn't meet my eyes. The family needs to heal, Felicity. We need to put this behind us. Maybe if you apologize to Celeste. Apologized? The word felt like glass in my mouth. For turning Marcus against her. For humiliating her at the wedding. I stared at him, finally seeing the truth. You still don't get it, do you? She didn't just steal my wedding plans, Nolan. She tried to steal my entire life, and you helped her do it. I never meant. No, you never meant anything. That's the problem. I turned to Celeste. You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry I ever thought I could be part of this family. I'm sorry I wasted months loving someone who couldn't even see what was right in front of him. That's not good enough, Celeste said. You destroyed my life. Now I'll destroy your business. I've already called every supplier in the city, told them about how you sell knockoffs as authentic vintage. Actually, a new voice interrupted, you won't be doing that. Marcus stood in the doorway, holding a folder. I recorded everything, Celeste. Every threat, every lie, every attempt to destroy Felicity's reputation. I think the police would be very interested in this pattern of harassment. Celeste's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. His voice was steel. The only reason I haven't turned this over already is because of Felicity. She asked me to wait to give you a chance to walk away. Is that true? Nolan asked me. I nodded. I didn't want to destroy your family, Nolan. I just wanted to protect myself. Felicity. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. No. We're done. All of us. I looked at Celeste. Take your brother and go. Build whatever story you need to explain your failed wedding. I don't care anymore. You're making a mistake, she said, but her voice trembled. The only mistake was thinking I needed any of this. I opened the door. Goodbye, Celeste. Goodbye, Nolan. They left silently, Nolan casting one last desperate look over his shoulder. Marcus stayed behind. You could have destroyed them, he said quietly. Why didn't you? I touched a vintage silk scarf, the one that had started everything. Because I don't want to be like her. Some things are worth more than revenge. What will you do now? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. What I've always done. Find beautiful things that others threw away and give them new life. Just, maybe not for the Brooks family anymore. As Marcus left, I turned the shop sign to open. Outside life went on. Inside, surrounded by the vintage pieces I'd lovingly restored, I finally understood. Sometimes the most valuable things we find aren't the ones we're looking for, but the parts of ourselves we discover along the way. And no one could steal that from me, not even Celeste Brooks. 6 months after Celeste's failed wedding, I stood in my new studio space, surrounded by the soft whisper of vintage silk and leather. The morning light filtered through tall windows, catching on the brass fixtures I'd salvaged from an old department store. Everything here had a story just like me. The bell chimed as Evelyn Brooks walked in, looking elegant but uncertain. This is beautiful, Felicity, she said, touching a restored Chanel jacket. Gerald said you'd done something special with the place, but this… Thank you. I adjusted a display, giving my hands something to do. I wasn't sure you'd come. Gerald insisted. He wants to talk about investing in your business. She paused, watching me carefully. Celeste left for Paris last week. I nodded, unsurprised. And Nolan? Taking assignments overseas. I think he finally understands what he lost. She moved closer, her voice softening. We all do. Before I could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Since the wedding, he'd become an unexpected ally, helping me source rare vintage pieces through his business connections. Ready for the meeting? He asked, then noticed Evelyn. Mrs. Brooks, perfect timing. Did you tell her about the investment offer? I was just getting to that. Evelyn pulled out an envelope. Gerald and I want to help you expand. Your talent for restoration, your eye for beauty, it shouldn't be limited to one shop. Inside the envelope was a business proposal, funding for a chain of high-end vintage restoration boutiques, with me as creative director. The kind of opportunity I'd once dreamed about sharing with Nolan. I don't know, I said slowly. The Brooks family and I don't have the best history with partnerships. That's exactly why it needs to be you, Gerald said, appearing behind his wife. Someone who chose integrity over acceptance. Who showed our family what we'd become. And what about Celeste? Nolan? They'll learn to live with it, Gerald said firmly. Just like they're learning to live with their choices. Marcus touched my arm gently. You don't have to decide now. But don't let what happens stop you from building something amazing. I looked around my studio, at the pieces I'd rescued and restored, at the sketches for designs that were entirely my own. Then I noticed something, a familiar orange box sitting on my counter. What's this? Found it at an estate sale, Marcus said, smiling. Thought you might want it back. Inside was the Hermes scarf from that first day with Nolan. But instead of feeling pain, I felt something else, closure. Okay, I said, looking at Gerald and Evelyn. But I have conditions. This is my vision, my designs. No compromises. We wouldn't want it any other way, Gerald replied. Later, after they'd left, I stood in my studio's doorway, watching the sunset paint the city gold. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. For everything. N. I didn't respond. Some vintage pieces are better left in their boxes, preserved as memories of who we used to be. Instead, I walked to my workbench where a damaged 1940s evening gown waited for restoration. Its beading was scattered, it seems frayed, but I could see its potential. Just like I'd finally seen my own. The bell chimed again. A young woman walked in, wearing uncertainty like I once had. I found this at a thrift store, she said, holding up a worn designer bag. Everyone says it's not worth fixing, but you see something in it, I finished, recognizing that familiar hope. Let me show you what it could become. As I led her to my workbench, I realized something. Sometimes the most valuable things we restore aren't the vintage pieces we find, but the parts of ourselves we thought were broken beyond repair. And sometimes, just sometimes, letting go of a dream makes room for something even better to take its place. I picked up my tools and began to work, ready to write my own story, one stitch at a time.
I stared at my phone, reading the voicemail transcript for the 5th time. My mother's words glowed on the screen, each one making my stomach twist a little tighter. Ember, please. I know it's been years, but I need your help. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. My name is Ember, and the last time I heard my mother's voice, I was 16. She was walking out our front door with a Louis Vuitton suitcase and promises of figuring things out. 8 years later, here she was. Her voice crackling through my phone speaker, acting like she had any right to ask me for anything. I was sitting in my father's office when the message came through. The familiar smell of leather and coffee surrounded me as I watched him shuffle through papers on his desk. He looked tired, more tired than usual. The afternoon sun streaming through the windows highlighted the gray in his hair that seemed to have multiplied overnight. Dad, I said, my phone still clutched in my hand. Mom just left me a voicemail. He stopped moving, his hand frozen over a stack of contracts. Corinne. The way he said her name, like it was both a prayer and a curse, made my chest ache. She says she needs help. I played the message on speaker, watching his face as my mother's voice filled the room. Please, Ember. I know I don't deserve it, but things aren't what they seem. I'm in trouble, and you're the only one I can trust. Dad's expression hardened. Delete it, he said firmly. Whatever game she's playing, you don't want any part of it. I should have listened to him. Should have deleted the message and gone back to our normal Tuesday afternoon routine of reviewing business reports and sharing takeout from the Thai place down the street. But something in her voice nagged at me, a tremor of fear I'd never heard before. What if she really is in trouble? I asked. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Sweetheart, your mother's greatest talent is making her problems everyone else's emergency. Trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way. He started coughing then, deep, rattling coughs that seemed to come from his very core. I rushed to get him water, but he waved me off. When the fit passed, he looked even more exhausted than before. Dad, are you okay? That cough's getting worse. Actually, he said, straightening in his chair, there's something I need to tell you. He gestured to the seat across from his desk. Sit down, Kido. My heart dropped. I knew that tone. It was the same one he'd used when he told me my childhood dog had died, when my first boyfriend cheated on me, when Mom left. I've been seeing some specialists, he began, his voice steady despite the weight I could hear behind his words. The tests came back last week. It's stage 4 lung cancer. They're giving me 6 months, maybe a year with treatment. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to anchor myself to something solid as everything else seemed to float away. No, I whispered. There has to be something they can do. We'll fight it, he assured me, reaching across the desk to squeeze my hand. But I need you to be prepared. The business, everything I've built, it's all going to be yours. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. Ember, please call me back. It's about your father. I looked up at Dad, who was watching me with concern. What does she know? I wondered aloud. Nothing good, he replied grimly. Whatever she wants, remember who she is. Remember what she did to us. But as I sat there, torn between my father's warning and my mother's plea, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding. Something that would force me to choose between the parent who stayed and the one who left, between trust and suspicion. Between the comfortable life I knew and the uncomfortable truths I might discover. I saved the voicemail, knowing that whatever I decided to do next would change everything. The cafe where I agreed to meet my mother was exactly her style, overpriced lattes and pretentious artwork on exposed brick walls. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a table near the exit. Old habits die hard. When she walked in, it felt like being punched in the chest. 8 years had barely touched her. Same perfectly styled blonde hair, same designer clothes, same confident stride that used to make me feel so proud when I was little. Now it just made me angry. Ember, sweetheart. She moved to hug me, but I stayed seated. Her arms dropped awkwardly to her sides. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I said, watching her settle into the chair across from me. You said this was about Dad? She flinched at his name, her manicured fingers fidgeting with her wedding ring. Not the one Dad gave her, but the upgrade from Victor. Her new husband. Yes, but first, how are you? You look wonderful. Are you still working with your father? Cut the small talk, Mom. What do you want? A barista approached, and Mom ordered some complicated drink I couldn't pronounce. I asked for black coffee, making her wince. Some things never change. Your father's sick, isn't he? She asked once we were alone again. Terminal cancer? My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. How did you? I have my sources. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Ember, there's something you need to know about the business. Your father. He's not who you think he is. A memory flashed through my mind. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, running alongside until I found my balance. Dad staying up all night helping me with science fair projects. Dad holding me while I cried after she left. Don't, I warned. Don't you dare try to poison this too. I'm trying to protect you, she insisted. There are things happening, deals being made. When your father dies, if you know so much, why didn't you reach out to him? Why come to me? Her perfect composure cracked, just for a second. Because he wouldn't listen. But you're smart, Ember. You always were. I need you to look into something for me. There are documents. Documents. I laughed, but it came out harsh. Let me guess, you need money. That's what this is really about, isn't it? It's not that simple. She glanced around nervously. Victor's company is struggling. If certain information came to light, there it is. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You haven't changed at all. Still using people, still only caring about yourself. Ember, please. She grabbed my wrist. Your brother Jasper. Don't. I yanked my arm away. Don't you dare use him to manipulate me. He's 15, the same age I was when you walked out on us. Does he know you're here? Her silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I pulled some cash from my wallet and dropped it on the table. Stay away from me, Mom. And stay away from Dad's business. As I turned to leave, she called out, I know about Milo Thompson's offshore accounts. I froze. Milo was Dad's business partner, practically my uncle. He'd been there for every birthday, every graduation, every milestone Mom had missed. What are you talking about? She smiled, that calculating smile I'd seen so many times before. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. I'll explain everything. I should have walked away. Should have told her to go to hell. Instead, I heard myself say, text me the details. Outside, I leaned against the building, trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed, a message from Dad. Everything okay, kiddo? I stared at the screen, thinking about the tired look in his eyes, about Milo's offshore accounts, about all the questions I suddenly had. Mom was lying. She had to be. But what if she wasn't? I typed back, all good. Just running some errands. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth, but I needed to know the truth. Even if it meant playing my mother's game, even if it meant risking everything I thought I knew about my family. Because sometimes the worst betrayals come from the people we trust the most. I spent 3 days digging through company records, searching for anything connected to Milo's supposed offshore accounts. The office felt different now. Every shadow held secrets. Every casual conversation could hide a lie. When Milo stopped by my desk that morning, my hands instinctively covered the financial reports I'd been reviewing. Working hard or hardly working? He asked, the same joke he'd made since I was a kid. "Just catching up on some paperwork," I said, forcing a smile. "How's Dad doing today?" "Resting. The chemo's hitting him pretty hard." Milo's face softened with genuine concern. "You should go see him, Ember. He's asking for you." Guilt twisted in my stomach. I'd been avoiding Dad, afraid my face would betray what I was investigating. "I will. Just need to finish something first." After Milo left, my phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. "Found what I mentioned yet? Time's running out." I was about to ignore it when an email notification popped up from Victor, my stepfather. My heart stopped when I saw the subject line, "Urgent, financial discrepancies." The email was brief. "Ember, need to discuss some concerning transactions I've discovered. Can we meet privately? Don't mention this to anyone, especially your mother." My hands shook as I drove to Victor's office downtown. The pieces weren't fitting together. Mom's warnings about Milo, Victor's mysterious email, Dad's illness. Something was very wrong. Victor's secretary led me straight in. He looked up from his computer, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Thank you for coming, Ember. Please close the door." "What's going on?" I asked, remaining standing. "What transactions?" He turned his monitor toward me. "These wire transfers, all to an account in the Cayman Islands. They're linked to your father's company, but the paperwork doesn't add up." I leaned closer, scanning the numbers. Millions of dollars transferred over the past year. "That's impossible. Dad would never." "It gets worse," Victor interrupted. "Your mother came to me last week, asking for a substantial loan. When I refused, she threatened to expose these transactions to the SEC. The room spun slightly. "She's blackmailing you?" "I think she's desperate," Victor said quietly. "But I'm more concerned about where this money is actually going." "Have you noticed anything unusual at the company?" Before I could answer, my phone rang Milo's number. When I answered, his voice was tight with panic. "Ember, get to the hospital." "No, it's your father." I ran out without explaining to Victor, my mind racing. At the hospital, I found Milo pacing outside Dad's room. "He collapsed during his treatment," he explained. "They're stabilizing him, but..." Through the window, I watched the medical team working around Dad's bed. He looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the strong man who'd raised me alone. "Milo," I said, my voice barely steady, "I need to ask you something. About the offshore accounts." He went very still. "Who told you about those? Does it matter? Are they real?" "Ember." He glanced at Dad's room, then pulled me further down the hallway. "Everything I've done has been to protect your father and you. But your mother, she's going to destroy everything we've built." "What are you talking about? What did you do?" Before he could answer, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Mom stood there, designer handbag clutched like a shield. "I tried to warn you, didn't I? About the kind of men you trusted." "Get out," I snapped. "You don't belong here." "Actually," she smiled, pulling papers from her bag, "I belong exactly here. These documents prove that Milo has been embezzling money for years. Money that should have gone to your father's medical care." Milo stepped forward. "Corinne, don't." "Unless," she continued, "my daughter helps me with a small financial matter. Then perhaps these papers never reach the authorities." I looked between them, Milo's guilty face, Mom's triumphant smile, Dad lying unconscious just yards away. The truth hit me like a physical blow. I was just a pawn in their game, and it was time to stop playing by their rules. "You want to see some real documents?" I pulled out my phone, bringing up Victor's email. "Let's talk about what I found." Dad was awake when I entered his hospital room the next morning, looking smaller against the white sheets. The documents I'd found were burning a hole in my bag, but one look at his face made me hesitate. "You look terrible," he said, managing a weak smile. "Look who's talking." I settled into the chair beside his bed, watching the steady drip of his four. "The doctors say you pushed yourself too hard yesterday. Had to make sure everything was in order at the office." He reached for the water glass, his hands shaking. I helped him take a sip, pretending not to notice how much weight he'd lost. "About the office," I started, but he cut me off. "Milo told me you've been asking questions." His voice was quiet but firm. "About the accounts." The air felt suddenly thick. "Did he tell you everything?" "Enough." Dad closed his eyes briefly. The money. It wasn't what you think. We were protecting the company. Protecting you. By committing fraud? The words came out sharper than I intended. Mom's threatening to expose everything unless I help her blackmail Victor. Did you know that? His laugh turned into a cough. Your mother always did have perfect timing. This isn't funny, Dad. The CC, the police, they could take everything you built. Everything I built? He looked at me directly now. Ember, the company was never meant to be my legacy. You are. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Jasper. Need to talk. Mom's acting weird. Can you meet? I have to go, I said, standing. But this conversation isn't over. Wait. Dad grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. There's a safe in my home office. Behind the gas print. The combination is your birthday. He released me, sinking back into the pillows. Whatever you find, remember I love you. I found Jasper at our usual spot, the old playground where I used to take him when he was little. At 15, he looked too big for the swings now. Mom's been crying, he said without preamble. I heard her on the phone talking about losing everything. And Victor, he's barely home anymore. It's complicated, Jazz. I'm not a kid anymore. His voice cracked slightly. I know something's wrong. Jess, is Mom in trouble? I thought about the documents in my bag, about Dad's safe, about all the lies tangling around us. We all are. Back at Dad's house, my hands trembled as I entered my birthday into the safe. Inside was a single USB drive and a letter addressed to me. The paper felt heavy, expensive, Mom's preferred stationery. The date showed it was written 8 years ago, the day she left. My phone rang Victor's number. When I answered, his voice was tense. Where are you? Dad's house. Why? Stay there. Your mother's on her way to the hospital. She's going to tell Owen everything unless we meet her demands. What demands? $2 million and control of the company's Asian subsidiaries. He paused. She says she has proof that the offshore accounts were used to hide money from her during your parents' divorce. If that's true, I looked at the unopened letter in my hand. I'll handle Mom. Jess, keep Jasper away from this. Ember, Victor said softly, whatever happens, I want you to know, I never knew what she was planning. I'm sorry. After hanging up, I finally opened the letter. Mom's elegant handwriting filled the page. My dearest Ember, by now you've discovered what your father and Milo did. The money they hid, the lies they told. I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I can't fight them alone. Someday you'll understand that sometimes we have to destroy everything to build something better. All my love, Mom. The paper crumpled in my fist as 8 years of grief turned to rage. They'd all lied, Mom, Dad, Milo. Each claiming to protect me while using me as a pawn in their game. Well, I was done being a pawn. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop, my finger hovering over the enter key. Whatever truth it contained would change everything. But maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Sometimes we have to destroy everything to build something better. I pressed enter. The USB drive contained years of financial records. But one transaction caught my eye, a series of payments to a shell company called Phoenix Holdings starting the day Mom left. I was still staring at the screen when my phone lit up with Jasper's text. Mom's taking me to the airport. Says we're going on a trip. My blood ran cold. I called him immediately. Where are you? I demanded when he answered. Terminal B. Mom's acting weird, Ember. She keeps checking her phone and... Put her on. A shuffle, then Mom's voice, smooth as silk. Ember, darling. Bad timing, we're about to board. Taking Jasper on an impromptu vacation with Victor's money? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Or should I ask Phoenix Holdings about their investment strategy? The line went quiet for a moment. How did you get away from my brother? No. He's my son. He's a kid you're trying to use as leverage. I was already grabbing my keys, running to my car. Like you used me 8 years ago. I'm protecting him, she hissed. Victor's company is collapsing. Once the SEC investigation starts. What investigation? Another pause. Check your email. I pulled up my phone's email app at a red light. There it was, a forwarded message from the Securities and Exchange Commission, requesting documents related to Phoenix Holdings and offshore transfers. You reported Victor's company, I realized. Your own husband. Victor, your father, Milo. They're all going down. But I can protect you and Jasper. We just need to leave for a while. I pressed harder on the accelerator. Put Jasper back on. Instead, I heard commotion in the background. A security announcement. Mom's muffled voice saying something about boarding passes. Mom. Jasper's voice came through, shaky. Ember, something's wrong. She's crying. I could see the airport ahead. Jazz, listen carefully. Mom's trying to run. Whatever she's told you. But Dad's in trouble, right? She said we have to leave before. She's lying. The words exploded out of me. She's been lying to all of us. The money, the threats, everything. It's all because she got caught stealing from Victor's company years ago. She's trying to escape before. The call dropped. I screeched into the terminal parking, barely remembering to lock the car. Running through the airport, I dialed Victor. She's trying to leave with Jasper, I gasped. Terminal B. Call security. Already done, he replied grimly. Ember. There's something else. Your father's asking for you. The doctors say. I stopped running. No, not yet. He can't. You need to choose. Now. The airport speakers crackled. Final boarding call for Flight 2476 to Grand Cayman. My phone buzzed, a text from Jasper. Help. Another from Dad's nurse. Please come quickly. And finally from Mom. I'm sorry, baby. Sometimes running is the only way to survive. I stood frozen in the terminal, tears burning my eyes. Dad was dying. Mom was escaping. Jasper was trapped in the middle. And I had to choose. The truth hit me then. This wasn't about justice anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about breaking a cycle of lies and manipulation that had poisoned our family for generations. I took a deep breath and made my choice. Victor, I said into the phone, I need you to do something for me. Pull up every record you have on Phoenix Holdings. Every transaction, every signature, every phone call. Then send it all to the SEC. That will destroy your mother. I know. I watched as airport security moved toward Gate B12. But sometimes we have to destroy everything to build something better. I ended the call and started running again, but not toward the gate. Toward the exit. Toward the hospital. Toward the only parent who had never made me choose between love and lies. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice calling my name, desperate and breaking. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I made it to Dad's hospital room just in time to hold his hand. His last words weren't profound or dramatic, just a quiet "I love you," before the monitors started screaming. I stood there numb, as the medical team rushed in, their urgent voices fading to white noise. Hours later, I sat in his empty room, staring at my phone. 17 missed calls from Victor. One text from Jasper. They arrested Mom at the airport. Where are you? A knock at the door made me look up. Milo stood there, his face drawn. Ember, I'm so sorry. About Owen, about everything. Did you know? My voice sounded strange, hollow. About Phoenix Holdings? He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Your father was trying to protect you. The money. It was meant to be your inheritance, hidden where Corinne couldn't touch it. Stop lying. I stood up, my legs shaky. I saw the records. The payment started the day Mom left. She was blackmailing you both, wasn't she? Milo's silence was answer enough. Dad died thinking I chose him, I whispered. But he was just as bad as she was. It's more complicated than that. Milo reached for my arm, but I jerked away. Owen wanted to tell you everything, but then the cancer. Miss Callahan? A detective stood in the doorway, her badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. We need to ask you some questions about Phoenix Holdings. My laugh sounded borderline hysterical. Join the club. We have evidence suggesting you were involved in the transactions. She pulled out a document. Your signature appears on several wire transfers. That's impossible. But even as I said it, I remembered the stack of papers Dad had me sign last month. Administrative stuff, he'd said. For the business. The detective's expression remained neutral. We'll need you to come with us. She doesn't go anywhere without a lawyer, Milo interrupted. Mr. Thompson, you're also under investigation. I suggest you both. My phone buzzed. Victor calling again. This time I answered. "They're freezing the company's assets," he said without preamble. "All of them, including your father's estate." The room started spinning. "But the medical bills, the funeral costs. I'll help however I can, but—" He paused. "Corinne's talking to the prosecutors. She's offering evidence against everyone, me Milo Owen's estate. She's trying to cut a deal." Of course she was. Even from a jail cell, Mom was still playing her games. "Miss Callahan," the detective was getting impatient. "Are you coming voluntarily, or do we need to make this official?" I looked around the hospital room where Dad had died less than 3 hours ago. His coffee cup still sat on the bedside table half full. A crossword puzzle lay unfinished beside it. All these little pieces of him, already turning into evidence in someone else's investigation. "I need a minute," I managed. "Please." Once they stepped outside, I sank into the chair, my head in my hands. Dad was gone. Mom was in custody. The company was frozen. And I might be headed to jail for signatures I didn't even know I was making. My phone buzzed one more time. "Jasper, they won't let me see Mom. I'm scared." That's when I broke. Tears came in huge, gasping sobs that felt like they might tear me apart. Everything Dad and I had built, everything we'd protected, was crumbling. And the worst part? I couldn't even grieve him properly because his lies were still unraveling. Through my tears, I noticed something poking out from Dad's crossword puzzle, a folded piece of paper with my name on it. With trembling fingers, I opened it. "My dearest Ember, if you're reading this, I'm gone and the truth is out. But there's one more thing you don't know. Check the safe at home one more time. The second combination, your mother's birthday. I'm sorry for the lies, but everything I did for love. Dad." The detective knocked again. "Miss Callahan? Time to go." I wiped my eyes and stood up, Dad's note burning in my pocket. Whatever was in that second safe, it was my last chance to understand why everyone I loved had chosen lies over truth. But first, I had to face the consequences of their choices. And mine. After 3 days of questioning, the police finally let me go home. The first thing I did was head to Dad's office, my hands shaking as I input Mom's birthday into the safe. Inside, I found a single envelope containing photos, dozens of them, showing Mom meeting with known criminals years ago, long before she left us. My phone rang. "Milo, don't trust the evidence," he said without preamble. "Your mother's deal with the prosecutors. It's based on forged documents." "How do you know?" "Because I helped her create them." His voice cracked. 8 years ago, when she threatened to expose Owen's dealings with Phoenix Holdings. But the real story, it's worse than you think. I spread the photos across Dad's desk. The real story is in front of me. Mom was working with criminals before she ever left. Dad was protecting me from her, wasn't he? No, Ember. He was protecting her. From them. From himself. From everything he did to keep her safe until she couldn't take it anymore. The office door opened. Victor stood there, looking exhausted. "They're moving Corinne to federal custody tomorrow. If you want answers, now's your chance." At the detention center, Mom sat across from me in her orange jumpsuit, her perfect facade finally cracking. "You found the photos. Start talking." She touched the glass between us. "I was young, stupid, working as a cocktail waitress when I met your father. He was different then, ambitious, dangerous. He used me to get close to certain people, gather information. When I tried to leave, he threatened to expose my involvement." "You're lying. Ask Milo. Ask him about the night Owen burned down his competitor's warehouse. Ask him where the Phoenix Holdings money really came from." My phone buzzed. Milo again. "Don't believe anything she says." "I'm on my way. He's coming here, isn't he?" Mom smiled sadly. "Perfect. Maybe now you'll finally learn the truth about the man who raised you." The detention center door burst open. Milo rushed in, out of breath. "Ember, wait. Tell her," Mom challenged. "Tell her about the fire. About the man who died." Milo's face went ash white. "Owen was protecting you. By becoming a murderer?" Mom's voice rose. "By forcing me to help cover it up? Stop it." I slammed my hand against the glass. "Both of you. Just stop." But they couldn't stop. Years of secrets poured out. Dad's illegal dealings, Mom's forced compliance, Milo's role as the faithful fixer. Each revelation felt like another knife in my chest. I left to protect you, Mom whispered. But Owen, he couldn't let go. Phoenix Holdings wasn't about hiding money from me. It was about keeping me quiet. The payments, the threats. He knew I'd never risk losing you completely. My phone lit up with a text from Victor. As you see, found something. Get to the office now. I stood up, my legs unsteady. You're both going to jail. You know that, right? Maybe, Mom said quietly. But ask yourself, why did Owen make you sign those documents last month? Why did he make sure your name was on everything? Horror dawned slowly. He knew he was dying. And he knew I'd talk, she finished. He tied you to everything, made you complicit. His final insurance policy. Milo reached for me. Ember, let me explain. I backed away from both of them. Dad didn't protect me. He used me. Just like you did, Mom. Just like everyone. Not everyone, Mom said. Check Victor's personal email. Password is Jasper's birthday. See who really tried to keep you clean in all this. I left them there, two broken people trapped in a web of their own making. In the parking lot, I sat in my car staring at my phone, wondering which truth would hurt less, the one I'd always believed, or the one I was about to discover. Sometimes the real revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about finally seeing them for who they really are. I typed in Jasper's birthday and held my breath. 1 year later, I stood in front of Dad's grave, autumn leaves crunching under my feet. The headstone was simple, just his name and dates, no mention of the legacy he left behind, both good and bad. Victor's emails had revealed everything. Years of correspondence showing how he'd worked secretly to protect me from both my parents' schemes, gathering evidence while trying to shield me from the worst of their manipulations. In the end, his testimony had helped reduce my involvement to unwitting participation, saving me from prosecution. Ready? Jasper asked, appearing beside me. At 16, he was already taller than me, but his eyes still held that same trust they always had. Almost. I placed a small stone on Dad's headstone, a tradition he'd taught me, though I never knew if he'd made it up or if it meant something more. The company had survived, barely. After the dust settled, I'd used what remained to start something new, a foundation helping kids affected by white-collar crime. It felt right, turning all that darkness into something meaningful. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom's prison email account. She had 3 years left on her sentence, reduced for cooperation. I hadn't opened any of her messages in months, but this subject line caught my eye. You were right. Inside was a single paragraph. I spent my life running from the truth, convincing myself that lies were protection. But you chose differently. You chose to face everything head-on, to build instead of destroy. I'm proud of you, even if I don't deserve to be. Mom still writing? Jasper asked, trying to sound casual. Yeah. I slipped the phone back in my pocket. How's therapy going? Better. Doctor says it's good. I'm talking about everything now. About Mom, about all of it. We walked back to the car together, where Victor waited. He'd become the father figure I never knew I needed. Steady, honest, present. The kind of parent who showed love through actions instead of words. Milo called, he said as we got in. The appeals court denied his request. I nodded, feeling nothing but a dull ache where the anger used to burn. Milo had tried to claim Dad had forced him into everything, but the evidence told a different story. Some betrayals can't be blamed on anyone else. Back at my new office, I found an unexpected visitor, the detective who'd first questioned me at the hospital. Miss Callahan, she said, rising from the reception area. I thought you'd want to know we found more of Phoenix Holdings victims. Families who lost everything. Send me their information, I replied. The foundation can help. She hesitated. There's something else. Your father. We found evidence suggesting he tried to make things right at the end. Anonymous donations. Debt forgiveness. It doesn't excuse what he did, but it complicates things, I finished. Everything does, eventually. After she left, I sat at my desk, looking at the photos on my wall. Not the perfect family portraits Mom used to insist on, but real moments. Jasper at his school play. Victor teaching me to golf badly. Even one of Mom from before everything fell apart, laughing at something off camera. And there, in the center, the last photo taken of Dad and me together, both of us smiling despite the hospital setting. We looked happy, even knowing what was coming, even carrying all those secrets. My computer pinged. Another donation alert. Someone had given a significant amount to the foundation, anonymously. The timing, the amount. It could only be Mom, using whatever resources she still had hidden away. I thought about deleting it, sending it back. But then I remembered what Dad had written in his final note. Everything I did for love. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. But I could choose what to do with that love now. The real kind, the complicated kind, the kind that survives even when everything else burns down. I accepted the donation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving points. Sometimes it's about building something new from the ashes of what was lost, and letting that be enough. I picked up my phone and, for the first time in months, opened the chat with Mom. Thank you. I typed and hit send. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. But it was a start.
The manila envelope sat on my doorstep like a ticking bomb. No return address, just my name, Ivy, written in careful block letters. I almost stepped over it, my mind still focused on the morning's client sessions at the gym, but something made me pause. My name is Ivy, and 3 years ago I thought I had everything figured out. Successful fitness trainer, loving husband, beautiful son, and a life that looked perfect on Instagram. Funny how one envelope can shatter all that. I picked it up, noting its weight, the way it bulged slightly in the middle. Inside my kitchen, I dropped my gym bag and protein shake, sliding my finger under the flap. Photos spilled onto my granite countertop like autumn leaves, each one more devastating than the last. Julian, my husband, with another woman. Different locations, different outfits, same intimate gestures. His hand on her lower back at a restaurant I didn't recognize. Her head thrown back in laughter as they walked through a park. The final photo showed them entering a hotel, his wedding ring conspicuously absent. My phone buzzed. Julian's face lit up my screen. Coming home late tonight, babe. Client dinner. I stared at his message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never once doubted him. Even when his mother Edith insisted we move into the family home to save money. Even when his sister Vivian made snide comments about my common background, I trusted Julian completely. No problem, I typed back. Noah and I will have dinner without you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Thanks for understanding. Love you. I set my phone face down and walked to our son's room. Noah was napping, his little chest rising and falling peacefully. 3, he was too young to understand what these photos meant, too innocent to know his father might be destroying our family. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. There's more you need to know. Meet me at Riverside Coffee tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come alone. I should have been angry, should have been screaming or crying. Instead, I felt oddly calm, like I was watching someone else's life implode. I picked up the photos, studying them more carefully. The woman was beautiful in an obvious way, exactly the type Julian's mother would approve of. Unlike me, with my athletic build and practical ponytail. The front door opened and I heard Edith's voice calling out, "Ivy? Where are you? The gardener needs direction about the rose bushes." I quickly slid the photos back into the envelope and tucked it into my gym bag. "Coming!" I called back, my voice steadier than I expected. Edith stood in the foyer, perfectly coiffed as always. "Really, dear, you should change out of those gym clothes before Noah wakes up. A mother should look presentable." "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "I'll go change right now." As I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, I heard her on the phone. "Yes, Vivian, she's finally home." "No, Julian isn't here yet." "Yes, I'll tell him about dinner on Sunday." I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., I'd meet my mysterious informant. Tomorrow, I'd find out just how deep this betrayal went. But tonight I'd play my part. I'd change into something presentable, smile through dinner with my mother-in-law, and tuck my son into bed. I'd kiss Julian when he came home, tasting his lies on his lips. Because if there's one thing being a fitness trainer has taught me, It's that the best results require patience, planning, and perfect form. And whatever was coming next, I intended to execute it flawlessly. Riverside Coffee was busier than I expected for a Tuesday morning. I dropped Noah at daycare early, telling myself it was just another normal day. Except normal days don't usually involve meeting mysterious strangers about your cheating husband. I spotted her immediately, the woman from the photos. She sat in a corner booth, stirring her coffee with mechanical precision. My stomach clenched, but I forced myself forward, sliding into the seat across from her. "I'm Caroline," she said, not looking up. "Julian's ex-fiancé." The word hit me like a slap. Julian had never mentioned being engaged before. Ex-fiancé? 3 years ago. Right before he met you, actually. She finally met my eyes. Edith arranged the whole thing. Old money, proper breeding, everything she wanted for her precious son. I thought about the photos. "But you're still seeing him." "No." Caroline's laugh was bitter. "Those photos are from 3 years ago, right before our wedding. I found out he was seeing you, confronted him, and he called everything off." She pulled out her phone, showing me the timestamp metadata on the photos. Edith never forgave either of us, him for choosing you, me for not fighting harder to keep him. My relief about the photos lasted exactly 3 seconds before the implications sank in. "Why show me now?" "Because yesterday I overheard something at the country club. Edith and Vivian were talking about Julian's investment opportunity. They're planning to drain your savings, Ivy. All of it." The pieces started falling into place. Julian's recent hints about a can't-miss business venture, his mother's sudden interest in my career success, the way Vivian kept bringing up my impressive client list at family dinners. How much do they think I have? Enough to cover Julian's gambling debts. That's what ended our engagement. I discovered he'd lost almost everything. The family fortune, his trust fund, all of it. Caroline's hands trembled slightly. "Edith covered it up, but she can't keep doing it. They need fresh money." My phone buzzed. "Julian, did you get a chance to look at those investment papers I left on your desk?" I stared at the message, remembering the thick folder he'd given me yesterday. I hadn't opened it yet, too distracted by the photos. "There's more," Caroline said quietly. "The house, it's not actually in Julian's name. Edith still owns everything. If you sign those papers, you'll be responsible for all their debts, but you'll have no legal claim to anything." The coffee shop door chimed. Vivian walked in, her designer handbag swinging. She froze when she saw us, her perfectly painted smile cracking. "Ivy? What a surprise." Her voice carried across the cafe. "And Caroline? How interesting." Caroline stood quickly. "Think about what I said," she murmured, then brushed past Vivian without acknowledgement. Vivian slid into the vacant seat, her expression concerned. "You shouldn't trust anything that woman says. She's been bitter ever since Julian chose you." "Did he choose me?" I asked quietly. "Or did he just need someone with a steady income?" Something flickered in Vivian's eyes, surprise, maybe even respect. "You're smarter than you look." She leaned forward. "Listen, whatever Caroline told you, just remember family comes first. Julian needs you right now. We all do." I thought about Noah, about the life I wanted for him. "Yes," I said slowly. "Family does come first." Vivian's smile returned, triumphant. She didn't notice my hands under the table, sending a quick text to my bank. "Freeze all accounts immediately. Possible fraud." "I should go," I said, standing. "I have clients waiting." "Of course." Vivian's voice was honey-sweet. "Oh, and don't forget about those investment papers. Julian's really counting on your support." I walked out of the coffee shop, my mind racing. They thought they had me cornered, this family of wolves in designer clothing. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I hadn't survived as a female fitness trainer in a male-dominated industry by being naive. The game they wanted to play? I could play it better. And I had nothing left to lose. That evening, I sat at my desk, staring at Julian's investment papers while Noah played with his blocks nearby. The documents looked legitimate enough: glossy brochures for a luxury resort development, projected returns that seemed too good to be true. Because they were. My laptop pinged with an email from my bank. Account frozen as requested. I'd need to visit in person to make any changes. Perfect. Mommy, look. Noah held up his tower of blocks, beaming. It's tall like Daddy. The front door opened and Julian's footsteps echoed through the hall. I quickly slid the papers into my desk drawer. There's my boy. Julian swept Noah up, making airplane noises. He looked at me, his smile faltering slightly. Did you get a chance to look at those papers? Actually, I tried to transfer the money, but there seems to be an issue with the bank. I watched his face carefully. They need me to come in person. Something flickered in his eyes. Panic? I can go with you tomorrow. Make sure everything goes smoothly. That won't be necessary. I stood up, stretching. I already made an appointment. Vivian offered to watch Noah. Julian set our son down, his movements suddenly precise. You saw Vivian today? At Riverside Coffee. Strange coincidence, running into her there. Temperature in the room seemed to drop. Julian's phone buzzed, probably Vivian warning him. He glanced at it but didn't answer. Ivy, about Caroline. Your ex-fiancé? The one you never mentioned? I kept my voice light, conscious of Noah playing nearby. The one your mother still compares me to at every family dinner? It wasn't serious. He stepped closer, reaching for my hand. You know you're the only one who matters to me. You and Noah. His touch felt different now, knowing what I knew. Like a snake's scale, smooth but cold. Noah, sweetie, I called out. Time to get ready for bed. But Daddy just got home. It's okay, champ, Julian said. I'll read you an extra long story tomorrow. As I tucked Noah in, Julian's phone buzzed again. And again. I heard him in the hallway, his voice low but urgent. Mother, now isn't a good time. When I came back downstairs, Edith was in our living room, impeccably dressed despite the late hour. Ivy, dear. We need to talk about these investment papers. Mother, Julian warned. No, Julian. This affects all of us. Edith's smile was razor sharp. Ivy needs to understand what family means. Family? I laughed, surprising all of us. Like how you covered up Julian's gambling debts. Or how you're trying to trap me into taking responsibility for them. Julian went pale. Edith's smile didn't waver, but her hands tightened on her designer purse. Caroline told you. It wasn't a question. That spiteful girl never could keep her mouth shut. She didn't have to tell me everything. I moved to my desk, pulled out the investment papers. I had these reviewed by a lawyer this afternoon. Interesting structure, all the liability, none of the ownership. Very clever. You went to a lawyer? Julian's voice cracked. I also spoke to the bank. I turned to Edith. Did you know Julian's been transferring money from our joint account to cover his gambling? $5,000 last week alone. Edith's composure slipped just for a moment. She turned to Julian. You're still gambling? The look on Julian's face, caught between his mother and his wife, between his addiction and his lies, almost made me pity him. Almost. I can explain, he started, but his phone buzzed again. This time I was close enough to see the screen. Not Vivian. Not his mother. A message from Amanda with a heart emoji. Missing you already. Last night was amazing. The silence that followed was deafening. I think, I said quietly, you both should leave. Ivy, Julian reached for me. Now. My voice didn't shake. Before I wake up Noah and tell him exactly why his father is leaving. They left, Edith's heels clicking on the hardwood, Julian's shoulders slumped in defeat. I locked the door behind them, then sat on the stairs, listening to Noah's soft breathing from upstairs. Tomorrow I'd go to the bank. Tomorrow I'd start untangling myself from their web of lies. But tonight I allowed myself one moment of pure, clarifying rage. They wanted to play games with my life, my money, my son's future? Fine. Game on. The bank manager's expression said everything before she even opened my account records. "Mrs. Harrison, there seems to be a problem." I already knew what she'd found. I'd spent all night reviewing our finances, tracking Julian's systematic drain of our accounts. But hearing the numbers out loud made my hands shake. "The transfers started small," she explained, sliding papers across her desk. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. But last month alone, she pointed to a figure that made my stomach turn. $50,000. Gone. "I'd like to close all joint accounts," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "and open new ones in my name only." As she processed the paperwork, my phone lit up with texts from Julian. "Where are you? Mother's worried. Please come home. We can fix this." The last one made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that startled the bank manager. "Sorry," I said. "Just remembered something funny. Like how Julian had convinced me to put my fitness business earnings into our joint account. For tax purposes," he'd said. "For our future." Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter. Dangerous. Free. I had an appointment with my lawyer next, but first I needed to pick up Noah from Ivy. Grant, Vivian's husband, stood by my car. In 3 years of family dinners and forced holidays, he'd barely spoken 10 words to me. Now here he was, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "They sent you to talk to me?" "No." He glanced around the parking lot. "They don't know I'm here. Listen, there's something you need to see." He held out a USB drive. "Financial records. The real ones. From before you married Julian." I stared at the small device. "Why are you helping me?" "Because, Vivian." He swallowed hard. "She's pregnant. And I won't let my child grow up in this mess." I took the drive, watching him walk away. At my lawyer's office, the documents told a story that made my blood run cold. The gambling debts weren't just Julian's. The entire family was drowning in them, using new loans to pay off old ones, creating a pyramid scheme of desperation. My phone buzzed again. Edith this time. "Family dinner tonight. Non-negotiable." Perfect. I drove home, finding Julian waiting in the driveway. He looked terrible, unshaven, shirt wrinkled. "Good. Where's Noah?" I asked before he could speak. "Mother has him." "Ivy, please let me explain about Amanda." "You can explain at dinner." I walked past him into the house. "I'm sure your mother would love to hear about her too." He grabbed my arm. "Don't. Mother can't handle any more stress right now." "Can't handle the truth, you mean?" I pulled away. "Like how you're still gambling. Or how you've been stealing from me." "Borrowing," he corrected quickly. "I was going to pay it back. The resort development is a scam." I turned to face him. "Just like our marriage." Something dark crossed his face. "You don't mean that." "Actually, I do." I headed upstairs to change. "See you at dinner, honey." In our bedroom, I packed a small bag, essential documents, some clothes for Noah and me, the USB drive, just in case. Then I dressed carefully, choosing the red dress Edith always said was too bold for family occasions. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Grant. "Be careful tonight. Vivian's been making calls." I smiled at my reflection, applying red lipstick with steady hands. They thought they had me cornered, the troublesome wife who needed to be managed, controlled, bled dry. They didn't realize they'd created their own worst nightmare, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Tonight's dinner would be interesting. I had the truth, the evidence, and most importantly, I had their precious family reputation in my hands. Let them try to stop me. Edith's dining room felt like a stage set, crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, silver gleaming on starched white linen. Noah sat between Vivian and Edith, happily munching on the chicken nuggets they'd specially ordered for him. My son, the only person they bothered to accommodate. More wine, dear. Edith's smile was razor-sharp as she lifted the bottle. No, thank you. I kept my glass full but untouched. I need a clear head for my morning clients. Ah, yes, your little exercise classes. She set the bottle down with a precise clink. Though I heard you've been doing more than just teaching lately. Julian stiffened beside me. I smiled. News travels fast. Grant mentioned something about a bank visit? Vivian's voice dripped concern. Is everything all right? Perfectly fine. I cut into my untouched steak. Just some routine account maintenance. Speaking of maintenance, Julian, did you tell your mother about Amanda? The silence was absolute. Even Noah looked up, sensing the tension. Amanda. Edith's knuckles whitened around her fork. Julian's new investment partner. I took a deliberate sip of water. They've been working very closely together. Noah, sweetie, Vivian stood quickly. Let's go watch your favorite show in the den. But I want to stay with Mommy. Go on, baby, I said softly. Just for a little while. The moment Noah left, Edith's facade cracked. What game are you playing, Ivy? Game? I pulled out my phone, sliding it across the table. Like the game where Julian empties our accounts for his gambling? Or the one where you try to trap me into taking on the family's debts? You ungrateful, Vivian started, but Grant caught her arm. Let her speak, he said quietly. I stood, walking to the antique sideboard where Edith kept her precious family photos. 3 years I've tried to fit into this family. 3 years of criticism, manipulation, and lies. I picked up a frame Julian and me on our wedding day. But you know what's funny? You were so busy trying to control me, you never noticed I was watching too. Ivy, please, Julian reached for me. Whatever you think you know. I know everything. I set the photo down hard enough to crack the glass. The gambling, the affairs, the fraud. Every loan, every scheme, every lie. You have no proof, Edith said, but her voice wavered. I laughed. Check your email. All of you. I sent quite an interesting package about an hour ago. Bank records, photos, everything. A copy to the police too, just in case. You wouldn't dare. Vivian's face was pale. Think about Noah. I am thinking about Noah. My voice finally broke. I'm thinking about how he deserves better than growing up in this poison. Better than watching his father gamble away his future while his grandmother orchestrates cover-ups. Mother, Julian's voice was desperate. Tell her it's not true. But Edith just sat there, her perfect posture finally crumbling. How did you get those records? Does it matter? I walked to the door. Noah. Time to go home, baby. You can't take him. Julian stood. This is his home. Actually, I pulled out another paper from my bag, according to our new custody agreement filed this afternoon. I can. Emergency temporary custody, granted due to evidence of financial fraud and unsafe living conditions. Noah came running in, Grant following with his backpack. Our eyes met briefly, his apologetic, mine grateful. But where will you go? Vivian stammered. Away from here. I took Noah's hand. Oh, and Julian? Amanda called. Apparently, she's pregnant too. Congratulations. The last thing I saw as we walked out was Edith's face crumpling, Vivian's hand flying to her own pregnant belly, and Julian, my charming, lying husband, finally running out of masks to wear. In the car, Noah yawned. Mommy, why didn't we finish dinner? Because sometimes, baby, I started the engine, watching the grand house shrink in my rearview mirror. Leaving the table is the healthiest choice you can make. My phone started buzzing with their calls and messages, but I didn't answer. They'd taken enough of my time, my money, my trust. But they wouldn't take another second of my future. Or my son's. 3 weeks into our new life, I woke to banging on my apartment door. Noah stirred in the makeshift bed beside me. We were still sleeping in the living room, waiting for furniture to arrive. Police! Open up! My heart stopped. Through the peephole, I saw 2 officers and Julian, his face a mask of concern. Perfect. Officers, I opened the door, keeping the chain on. Is something wrong? Ma'am, we have reports of child endangerment. We need to check on Noah's welfare. Behind them, Julian's concerned facade cracked into a slight smirk. Of course. When manipulation failed, he'd try force. I let them in, watching as they took in our sparse living room, the air mattresses, the takeout containers, Noah's toys scattered across the floor. It looked bad, I knew that. Exactly as Julian had planned. Noah, baby, come say hi to the officers. My son peeked out from behind me, thumb in mouth, a habit he'd picked up since we left. Daddy! Hey, champ. Julian stepped forward, but I blocked his path. My lawyer, I said to the officers, pulling out my phone. I need to call her. Of course, one officer nodded, while his partner spoke quietly into his radio. Julian moved closer, his voice low. You really think anyone will believe you over me? A single mother living like this? He gestured at our temporary setup. While I have a proper home, family support, stability? You mean the stability of gambling debts? Or the family support of lies and fraud? Prove it. His smile was cold. Those records you threatened us with? Inadmissible in court. Grant made sure of that before he handed them over. My stomach dropped. Grant's help had been too convenient, too perfect. Another manipulation. The officers finished their inspection, making notes about the living conditions. I could see it through their eyes, the missing furniture, the makeshift beds, the chaos of a hasty move. All while Julian stood there in his perfect suit, radiating concern and stability. Mrs. Harrison, the older officer said, we'll need you to come down to the station. There are some questions. A knock interrupted him. Through the still open door walked Caroline, carrying a stack of files. Sorry I'm late, she said, all business. I'm Mrs. Harrison's attorney, and I believe you officers will find these interesting. She handed them each a folder. Certified bank records showing Mr. Harrison's gambling losses. Court admissible evidence of financial fraud. And she smiled at Julian. DNA test results proving Mr. Harrison's paternity of my unborn child. Julian's face went ash-white. My client, Caroline continued, has full documentation of her income, rental agreement, and Noah's new school registration. The temporary living conditions are just that, temporary. The furniture arrives tomorrow. The officers reviewed the documents, their expressions shifting. Julian started to speak, but Caroline cut him off. Oh, and one more thing. She pulled out her phone, playing a recording of Julian's voice. Those records you threatened us with? Inadmissible in court. Grant made sure of that. You recorded me? Julian sputtered. No, I said quietly. I did. Just now. Funny how people reveal themselves when they think they've won. The officers exchanged looks. Mr. Harrison, we'll need you to come with us. Making false reports is a serious offense. As they led Julian out, Caroline turned to me. You okay? I looked around our sparse apartment, at Noah playing quietly with his toys, unaware of how close we'd come to losing everything. Why help me? I asked. After everything. Because 3 years ago I was you. Except I didn't fight back. She touched her pregnant belly. This time I am. After they left, I sat beside Noah, watching him stack blocks into wobbly towers. My phone buzzed with a text from Grant. I'm sorry. They threatened Vivian, the baby. I had to. Another buzz, Edith. This isn't over. She was right. It wasn't over. But for the first time since this started, I wasn't afraid. They'd thrown everything they had at me, and I was still standing. Tomorrow, the furniture would arrive. Tomorrow, we'd start building our new life for real. But tonight, watching Noah play in our imperfect temporary home, I realized something important. Sometimes rock bottom has a foundation you can build on. The Harrison family mansion loomed before me, its windows dark except for Edith's study. 6 months had passed since that night with the police, and now I was back, not as Julian's wife or Edith's daughter-in-law, but as their creditor. I adjusted my blazer, checking that the USB drive was still in my pocket. Noah was safe with Caroline, probably playing with her newborn daughter. The thought gave me strength as I rang the doorbell. Grant opened it, looking haunted. "They're all in the study. How convenient." I stepped past him. Everyone I need to see, all in one place. The study door was ajar, voices drifting out. Edith's sharp tone, Julian's pleading, Vivian's barely contained hysteria. "We can't sell the house," Edith was saying. "It's been in the family for generations." I pushed the door open. "Actually, you can. And you will." They froze like actors in a tableau, Edith behind her massive desk, Julian pacing, Vivian perched on the leather sofa, her pregnancy now obvious. "You have no right to be here," Edith started, but I cut her off. "I have every right." I placed a folder on her desk. "As the majority holder of your debt." Julian stopped pacing. "What?" "It's amazing what you can buy when a family's desperate. I've spent the last 6 months acquiring your loans, your mortgages, everything." I smiled. "You wanted my money? Now you have my attention." "You vindictive little," Vivian stood, but Grant caught her arm. "Let her speak," he said quietly. "Oh, now you want to hear me?" I pulled out the USB drive. "Funny, because I've been listening to all of you for years. Every criticism, every manipulation, every lie." I turned to Julian. "Including your conversations with Amanda about how to bleed me dry." "I never," Julian started. "Save it." I connected the drive to Edith's computer. "Everything's here, the gambling, the fraud, the conspiracies. But that's not why I'm here." Edith's face had gone pale as she scanned the files. "What do you want?" "Simple. Sign over the house and assets to my holding company and I'll restructure your debt. You can stay here as tenants. Under my terms." "You can't be serious," Vivian laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Or," I continued, "I can call in all the loans tomorrow." "Your choice." Julian moved toward me, his charm switching on like a light. "Ivy, sweetheart, we can talk about this." "Don't." My voice cracked like a whip. 3 years, Julian. 3 years I tried to be part of this family. And you know what I learned? The only thing you people understand is power. "You're just like us," Edith said softly. "Using money to control people." "No." I met her eyes. "I'm protecting my son from becoming like you. Noah will grow up knowing his worth isn't measured by his bank account or family name." "And what about my grandchild?" Vivian's hand rested on her belly. "Would you leave them homeless?" "Sign the papers and no one has to leave. But things will change." I pulled out a pen. "Starting with how you treat people." Silence fell. I could see them calculating just as they'd calculated how to use me years ago. Finally, Edith reached for the pen. "Mother, no." Julian protested. "Enough, Julian." Edith's hand shook as she signed. "We did this. All of us." One by one they signed, Vivian with tears, Julian with rage, Grant with what looked like relief. "It's done," I said, collecting the papers. "The lawyers will contact you about the new arrangements." As I turned to leave, Edith spoke again. "Was it worth it? This revenge?" I paused at the door. "This isn't revenge, Edith. It's protection from yourselves." I looked at each of them. "Maybe now you'll learn what family really means." Walking out, I heard Vivian start to cry, Julian cursing, Edith's heavy silence. But for the first time since I'd entered their lives, I felt clean. Free. My phone buzzed, a photo from Caroline of Noah playing with her daughter, both laughing. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not power, but building something better for the next generation. Let the Harrisons keep their mansion. I had everything I needed. 1 year later, I stood in front of the Harrison mansion, watching the movers carry out Edith's antiques. Noah played on the front lawn, his laughter mixing with the sound of another child, Vivian's daughter, Emma, crawling after him on a blanket while Grant watched them both. Everything's packed, Caroline appeared beside me, her own daughter strapped to her chest. Edith's waiting in the study. I nodded, taking a deep breath. This wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I'd first walked through these doors as Julian's bride, but maybe it was the one we all needed. The study looked smaller now, its shelves empty. Edith sat at her desk. No, my desk now, writing something. The last of the paperwork? I asked. She looked up, her face softer than I remembered. A letter. For Noah. She held it out. For when he's older. To explain. Everything. I took it, noting how her hands trembled. I heard Julian's doing better. The gambling therapy. 6 months sober. A ghost of pride crossed her face. Amanda's baby helped. Gave him something to fight for. Like Noah did for me. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Edith stood, smoothing her skirt with dignified precision. I never told you why I was so hard on you, she said quietly. I saw myself in you. The determination, the independence. I had that once before I let this house, this name, become everything. She gestured around the study. I thought I was protecting Julian from my mistakes. Instead, I turned him into his father. And now? She smiled sadly. Now I'm moving into a 2-bedroom condo, learning to live without walls of photographs, pretending we were perfect. She moved to the window, watching Noah and Emma play. Sometimes losing everything shows you what you actually had. A noise at the door made us turn. Vivian stood there, Emma's diaper bag over her shoulder. The movers need the keys, she said, then hesitated. We're still on for Sunday? Noah seemed excited about the playground. As long as you remember the rules, I said firmly. No manipulation, no games, no comparing the children. Vivian recited, then added softly, just family. Whatever that means now. I handed Edith the study keys. She took them, then surprised me by pulling out an old photograph from her purse. Found this while packing, she said. Showed a young woman in workout clothes, standing proudly in front of a small gym. Me at your age. Before I decided status mattered more than strength. I studied the woman in the photo, seeing echoes of myself, of Vivian, even of Caroline. All of us fighting for something we thought we needed, only to find different battles worth winning. Keep it, Edith said. Remind Noah that his grandmother wasn't always a nightmare mother-in-law. She actually laughed, a real laugh, not the polished society chuckle I'd grown to hate. Something like that. Outside, Noah's voice carried through the window. Mommy! Emma did it. She's walking. We rushed to watch as Vivian's daughter took wobbly steps toward Noah, Grant filming with his phone while Caroline cheered. A moment of pure joy, untainted by expectations or facades. You did the right thing, Edith said quietly. Breaking our cycle, making us face ourselves. It wasn't about breaking anything, I replied, watching Noah help Emma balance. It was about building something better. As Edith left for the last time, I opened her letter to Noah. The final lines caught my eye. Your mother taught us that true strength isn't in what you own or control, but in knowing when to let go. Remember that, and remember that family, real family, is built on love, not fear. Even if it takes some of us a lifetime to learn the difference. I folded the letter, tucking it away for Noah's future. Outside, my son was teaching Emma to play pat-a-cake, their laughter echoing through the empty house. Not every broken thing needs to be fixed, I realized. Sometimes it just needs to be rebuilt differently but stronger. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, surrounded by the truth of who you are.
I never thought a simple piece of paper could change everything, but that's exactly what happened on a quiet Tuesday morning at Sugar Haven. The letter was waiting for me when I opened the store, tucked halfway under the front door like a snake ready to strike. My name is Cashin, but everyone calls me Cass. 5 years ago, I traded my high-powered career as a corporate crisis manager to help run my husband's family candy store. It wasn't exactly a lateral move, but love makes you do crazy things. The paper trembled in my hands as I read it. The store's finances are being mismanaged. If things continue this way, Sugar Haven will be bankrupt within months. Someone who cares. I read it 3 more times, my stomach dropping further with each pass. The morning sun streamed through our storefront windows, catching the dust motes dancing around our display of handmade chocolates. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. But something felt very, very wrong. "Morning, darling." My mother-in-law Margot's voice rang out as she swept into the store, perfectly coiffed as always. "Those display cases need cleaning before we open." I quickly stuffed the letter into my pocket. "Margot, do you have a minute? There's something we should discuss." She barely glanced my way, busy adjusting a row of lollipops. "Can it wait? The morning rush will start soon. It's about the store's finances, Dash." "Oh, not this again." She turned to face me, her smile tight. "Cashin, dear, I've been running this store since before you were born. Everything is fine. But what if it's not? Maybe we should look at the books together, Dash." "The books are my responsibility," she cut in sharply. "Your job is to manage the front of house and keep the customers happy. That's what you're good at." The bell above the door chimed as my husband Eli walked in, bringing with him the scent of coffee and his usual easy smile. "Morning, loves." "Mom, those new display cases you ordered arrived. They're gorgeous." "New display cases?" I asked. "I thought we agreed to hold off on any major purchases this quarter." "These were necessary," Margot said smoothly. "First impressions matter in retail. Speaking of which, I've hired a new assistant to help with the afternoon rush. Lila starts tomorrow." "Wait, what?" I stared at her. "We didn't discuss hiring anyone." "We're discussing it now," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eli agrees we need the help, don't you, sweetheart?" Eli nodded, already distracted by his phone. "Whatever you think is best, Mom." I watched them, this mother and son duo, who could so casually make decisions that affected all of us without even consulting me. The anonymous letter burned in my pocket like a hot coal. "I need to check something in the office," I said, turning away before either could respond. As I walked to the back of the store, I heard Margot's voice. "Oh, and Eilif, dear, remember we have that meeting with the bank tomorrow." I froze mid-step. What bank meeting? Why hadn't anyone mentioned this to me? Standing there among the shelves of candy and childhood dreams, I suddenly felt like an outsider in my own life. Something was happening at Sugar Haven, something beyond normal family business drama. The letter writer knew it, and now I knew it too. I pulled out my phone and texted my friend Claire, who'd quit working here 6 months ago. "Need to talk. Something's not right at the store." Her response came quickly. "Finally figured it out, huh? Meet me for coffee after your shift. There's a lot you need to know." I slipped my phone back into my pocket, my heart racing. Whatever was going on, I had a feeling this was just the beginning. And for the first time since leaving my old career, I felt that familiar surge of adrenaline that came with unraveling a crisis. "Game on, Margot. Game on." Claire was already waiting at our usual corner table in Brewster's when I arrived, 2 steaming mugs in front of her. The afternoon sun caught the worry lines around her eyes as she watched me approach. "You look like hell," she said, pushing a coffee toward me. "Thanks for sugarcoating it." I slumped into the chair, exhausted after a day of fake smiles and pretending everything was fine. "You were right about leaving Sugar Haven when you did. What finally tipped you off?" I pulled out the anonymous letter and slid it across the table. Claire read it, her expression darkening. "Well, shit. Though I'm not surprised. You should see what Eli just bought." She turned her phone toward me, showing an Instagram post. My husband stood proudly next to a brand new Tesla, Margot beaming beside him. The timestamp showed it was posted an hour ago. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. We can't afford that. We literally just had a conversation about cutting back on expenses. That's not all, Claire said, scrolling through more photos. Designer clothes, fancy dinners, weekend trips. He's been living large for months now. With what money? I whispered, more to myself than to her. The store's barely breaking even. Remember that inheritance you got from your aunt last year? The one you were saving for emergencies. My blood ran cold. He wouldn't. Check your joint account. With trembling fingers, I pulled up our banking app. The inheritance money was still there, but there was something else, a series of large transfers from our business account to an unfamiliar number. What's this account? Claire asked, peering at my screen. I don't know. I don't have access to it. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. But I bet Margot does. Claire's expression softened. Honey, you need to wake up. This isn't just about the store anymore. They're playing you. But why? I gave up everything to help them. My career, my independence dash. Because you let them, she cut in. You're so busy trying to prove yourself worthy of their precious family legacy that you can't see what's really happening. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Eli. Where are you? Mom needs help with inventory. She needs help with inventory because she just fired 2 more experienced staff members last week, Claire said, reading the message upside down. Replace them with minimum wage teenagers who don't know a truffle from a Tootsie Roll. I stood up, gathering my things. I should go. Cass, wait. Claire grabbed my wrist. Remember when I quit? It wasn't just because of Margot's attitude. I found something in the office files, something that didn't add up. But when I tried to tell you, you weren't ready to hear it. And now I think you are. Meet me tomorrow morning before the store opens. Bring your laptop and the store's tax returns from last year. I hesitated. Those are in Margot's office. She keeps it locked. Claire's smile was sharp. Good thing I made a copy of her key before I left. Back at the store, I found Eli and Margot huddled together in the office, speaking in hushed tones. They jumped apart when I entered. Where have you been? Margot demanded. We have that bank meeting tomorrow, and these numbers need to be perfect. What bank meeting? I asked, watching their faces carefully. Just routine business, Eli said quickly. Nothing to worry about. Then you won't mind if I join you? Mother and son exchanged glances. That won't be necessary, Margot said smoothly. You focus on training the new girl tomorrow. Lila needs a proper introduction to how we do things here. I nodded, playing along. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of papers on Margot's desk, loan applications with Sugar Haven listed as collateral. That night, after Eli fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and grabbed his phone. The password was still my birthday. At least that hadn't changed. What I found in his recent emails made my heart stop. Tomorrow's meeting wasn't routine at all. It was about refinancing a massive debt I knew nothing about. And my inheritance account was listed as potential collateral. I looked at my sleeping husband, this man I thought I knew, and made a decision. Tomorrow morning, I'd meet Claire and finally learn the truth. But first, I had a stop to make. At the bank where I kept my inheritance, to move it somewhere safe. Let the games begin. The bank opened at 8, but I was there at 7:30, pacing outside like a burglar casing the joint. By 9, my inheritance was safely transferred to a new private account. By 9:15, I was sitting in Claire's car outside Sugar Haven, staring at the store's tax returns spread across her dashboard. Holy shit, I whispered, running my finger down the columns of numbers. These can't be right. Oh, they're right, Claire said. Just not legal. Look at the supplier invoices. She pulled out more papers, showing me identical invoices with different amounts. One set matched the tax returns, the other showed much higher numbers. The difference was staggering. Margot's been cooking the books, I said, my mouth dry. But why? The store's been profitable for years. Has it? Claire raised an eyebrow. Or has she just been really good at making it look that way? The store's front door opened, and a young woman with bright red hair stepped out to sweep the sidewalk. Lila, Margot's new hire. She looked up, caught my eye, and quickly looked away. That's weird, I muttered. She's not supposed to start until today. Looks pretty comfortable for her first day, Claire observed. My phone buzzed. Eli calling. I ignored it. I need to get inside before they wonder where I am. Cass, Claire grabbed my arm. Be careful. You're not dealing with amateurs here. Inside, I found Margot showing Lila around the store like they were old friends. Lila's movements were too confident, too familiar with the space. Good you're here, Margot said brightly. Lila's been helping me organize the new inventory system. Such a quick learner. Really? I leaned against the counter. And when exactly did she learn it? A flicker of something, worry? Crossed Margot's face before her smile returned. Lila's been helping out informally for a few weeks. I wanted to make sure she was a good fit before making it official. Interesting. I turned to Lila. And what did you do before this? She started, but Margot cut her off. Shouldn't you be checking on that order for the Johnson wedding? It needs to be ready by noon. Actually, I said, not moving. I'd love to hear about Lila's experience. Especially with bookkeeping. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lila's eyes darted between us like she was watching a tennis match. Cashin. Margot's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. A word in my office? Once inside, she closed the door with deliberate calm. I don't appreciate you interrogating my employees. And I don't appreciate being lied to about the store's finances. Her laugh was sharp. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone, showing her the photo I'd taken of the doctored invoices. Want to explain these? The color drained from her face. Where did you get those? Does it matter? What matters is what they show: fraud, tax evasion, and God knows what else. Is this why you've been pushing so hard to get access to my inheritance? To cover your tracks. You don't understand, Dash. Then make me understand. I slammed my hand on the desk. Because from where I'm standing, you and Eli have been systematically lying to me while trying to steal my money. The office door opened. Eli stood there, his face ashen. Mom? The bank called. They're denying the loan. Margot sank into her chair. That's not possible. We had an agreement. They found irregularities in our paperwork. His eyes met mine. What did you do? Me. I laughed, the sound hollow. Why don't you ask your mother about the fake invoices? Or better yet, ask Lila. She seems to know more about this place than I do, and I'm supposedly co-managing it. Cass, please. Eli stepped toward me. Whatever you think is happening, Dash. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop lying. I moved my inheritance this morning. You can't touch it. Margot's head snapped up. You what? And I have copies of everything. The real books, the fake invoices, all of it. So here's what's going to happen. Either you both start telling me the truth right now, or I walk straight to the IRS. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Eli spoke, his voice barely a whisper. Mom, tell her. Margot looked between us, her carefully constructed world crumbling. When she spoke, her words hit me like physical blows. Sugar Haven has been insolvent for 3 years. Everything, the loans, the fake books, it was all to keep us afloat until we could access your inheritance. And Lila, my accountant's daughter, she's been helping us manage the situation. I looked at my husband, this stranger wearing Eli's face. How long have you known? His silence was answer enough. I spent the night at Claire's, ignoring the flood of texts and calls from both Eli and Margot. By morning, I had 18 missed calls and 1 email with the subject line, Family Emergency Meeting, 9 a.m. The irony of them finally including me in a meeting wasn't lost on me. When I walked into Sugar Haven at exactly 9, the store was still dark. Voices drifted from the back office, sharp and urgent. I found them all there, Margot behind her desk, Eli pacing, and Lila perched nervously in the corner with a laptop. You came, Eli said, relief washing over his face. Don't. I held up my hand. Just tell me what this is about. Margot cleared her throat. We have a proposal. A way to save everything. Everything you've been lying about? The store is salvageable, she pressed on. With the right investment, Dash. You mean my inheritance. It would be an investment in your future too, Eli jumped in. We could restructure, make you a proper partner, Dash. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Now you want to make me a partner? After 3 years of treating me like a glorified cashier. 1/3 ownership, Margot said quietly. Equal partnership with Eli and me. The room went silent. Even Lila stopped typing. Show me the real numbers, I said. All of them. Lila turned her laptop around. The screen showed years of declining sales, mounting debt, and desperate attempts to keep up appearances. The store hadn't turned a real profit since before I married Eli. Why didn't you tell me? I asked him. I could have helped. It's literally what I used to do for a living. Mom said he started, then stopped, looking trapped. I said we could handle it, Margot finished. This store was my life before you came along. I couldn't just dash. Just what? Trust me? Accept that someone else might know better. The old anger rose in my throat. You'd rather commit fraud than let me help? We did what we had to do, she snapped. To protect our legacy. Your legacy? I stepped closer to her desk. What about my legacy? The money you're so desperate to get your hands on, that was my aunt's legacy to me. The only family member who ever truly supported me. And now you can support your new family, Margot said, her voice softening. Isn't that what marriage is about? Sharing everything. The manipulation was so obvious it almost made me laugh. Like you've shared everything with me? Cass, please. Eli moved toward me. We can fix this. Together. I looked at my husband. Really looked at him. The man I'd given up my career for, who'd let his mother systematically push me aside while plotting to take my inheritance. Okay, I said finally. I have some conditions. Hope flickered across their faces. First, Margot steps down. Completely. No more secret books. No more hiring decisions. No more control. Absolutely not, she started, but I cut her off. Second, we bring in an independent auditor. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. That's not necessary. Lila spoke up for the first time. I can dash. You can leave, I said flatly. Now. She looked at Margot, who nodded slightly. After she left, I continued. Third, Eli moves out until we figure this out. I need space to think clearly. What? His face crumpled. Cass, no. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Margot stood slowly, her face tight with fury. You ungrateful little . Mom, don't, Eli warned. No, let her finish, I said. Let's hear exactly what she thinks of the woman whose money she's been plotting to steal. The silence stretched between us like taffy, sweet and dangerous. Finally, Margot spoke, her voice trembling with rage. This store was successful long before you came along, and it will be successful long after you're gone. I smiled, feeling strangely calm. No, Margot, it won't. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Because I just forwarded copies of your creative bookkeeping to the IRS and the bank. I'm sure they'll find it fascinating reading. The color drained from both their faces. You're bluffing, Margot whispered. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. Want to bet your legacy on that? I couldn't sleep that night, so I went back to Sugar Haven around midnight to clear my head. The store always felt different after hours. Peaceful, almost honest in its emptiness. But as I approached, I noticed a light on in the back office. Through the window, I saw Eli and Lila huddled close together over the computer, their faces illuminated by the screen. His hand was on her shoulder, and she was nodding intently at whatever he was saying. My stomach lurched. I used my key to enter quietly, catching fragments of their conversation. Can't tell her about this, Eli was saying. It would destroy everything. But she already knows about the books, Lila replied. Maybe if we just dash. No. His voice was firm. Mom's right. Some things have to stay buried. I stepped into the doorway. What things? They jumped apart like guilty teenagers. Lila's face went white, and Eli's expression cycled through surprise, fear, and something that looked suspiciously like relief. Cass, he started. This isn't what it looks like. I moved closer, noting the spreadsheets on the screen. Then tell me what it is, Eli. For once, just tell me the truth. Lila grabbed her bag. I should go. Stay. My voice was ice. I want to hear exactly what needs to stay buried. They exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that people share when they're keeping secrets. Finally, Lila spoke. Show her, she told Eli. She'll find out anyway. He slumped in defeat, turning the laptop toward me. What I saw made my knees weak. A second set of books, going back years before I joined the business. Not just creative accounting, but systematic fraud. And at the bottom of each year's records, 2 signatures, Margot Rivers and my husband's. How long? I whispered. Since Dad died, Eli admitted. The store was in trouble and Mom, she couldn't let it fail. Said it would kill Dad all over again if we lost it. So you just went along with it? Year after year. I tried to fix it. His voice cracked. That's what Lila's been helping me with. She knows accounting, and I thought maybe if we could straighten things out before anyone found out. Before I found out, you mean. The pieces clicked into place. That's why Margot hired her. Not to help with the store, but to cover your tracks. Lila stood up straighter. It's not like that. I really was trying to help Dash. By lying to me? By helping them steal my inheritance. No. Eli reached for me, but I stepped back. The inheritance thing, that was Mom's idea. I never wanted Dash. But you went along with it. I cut in. Like you always do. He fell silent, and in that silence, I heard everything he couldn't say. Every choice he'd made, every lie he'd told, every time he'd chosen his mother's approval over my trust. I'm having panic attacks, he said quietly. About the store, about Mom, about everything. Lila's been helping me deal with it. That's all. And you couldn't tell me this because you would have tried to fix it. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Like you fix everything. And I needed to prove I could handle it myself. I looked at my husband, really looked at him. The boy trying to be a man, forever caught between his mother's expectations and his own inadequacies. And I felt something inside me break. I'm done, I said softly. What? I'm done fixing things. Done pretending we're partners when you've never trusted me enough to be one. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Lila? The anonymous letter warning about the store's finances. Was that you? She nodded slowly. Someone had to do something. I laughed, the sound hollow in the empty store. Well, congratulations. You did something all right. Cass, wait. Eli called after me. Where are you going? I paused at the door, looking back at the ruins of my marriage scattered across a computer screen. To pack my things. I suggest you do the same before the IRS shows up. The bell above the door chimed as I left, its cheerful sound a final, bitter reminder of all the sweetness I'd thought we were building together. 3 days after I left, Margot showed up at Claire's apartment where I was staying. She didn't look like the polished matriarch I knew. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled. She clutched a manila envelope like a lifeline. The IRS is coming tomorrow, she said without preamble. We need to talk. I let her in more out of curiosity than compassion. Claire made herself scarce, squeezing my shoulder as she left. Where's Eli? I asked. At his sister's. Margot's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. I have a proposal. Another one? The last one worked out so well. She spread documents across Claire's coffee table. We can still save the store. If we act fast, we can restructure everything before Dash. Before what? Before you go to jail for tax fraud. Her face hardened. Is that what you want? To see your husband in prison. The question hit me like a physical blow. Don't you dare put this on me. You did this. You and Eli. We did it for the family. She stood up, pacing. Everything I've done has been to protect what my husband built. What we built. By destroying it. By saving it. She whirled on me. You think you're so much better than us with your corporate background and your crisis management skills. But you don't understand what it means to protect a legacy. I laughed bitterly. A legacy of lies? A legacy of survival. She sat down heavily. The store was all Robert had left when he died. His dream. His heart. I couldn't let it die too. For a moment, I saw her clearly, not as the manipulative mother-in-law, but as a widow desperately trying to hold on to her husband's memory. It didn't excuse anything, but it explained so much. I can't help you, Margot. You can. She pulled out another document. Sign over your inheritance as an investment. We'll make you full partner, equal share with Eli. I'll step down completely. Why should I believe you? Because I'm desperate. The admission seemed to cost her physically. Because Eli loves you. Because Dash. My phone buzzed, a text from Eli, don't sign anything. Coming over. 10 minutes later, he burst in, looking wild-eyed. Mom, stop. It's over. Eli, please, Dash. I confessed. He wouldn't meet either of our eyes. To the IRS. This morning. About everything. The silence that followed was deafening. You did what? Margot whispered. I couldn't take it anymore. The lying, the pressure. He finally looked at me. I'm sorry, Cass. For all of it. I felt oddly hollow. What happens now? They're charging me with tax fraud. Mom too, probably. The store. He swallowed hard. They're seizing everything. Margot crumpled into herself. Decades of careful control shattering. You fool. You stupid, weak fool. Mom dash. Get out. Her voice was ice. Both of you, get out. I gathered my things, watching as she clutched the worthless documents to her chest. At the door, Eli caught my arm. I did it for you, he said softly. To prove I could be honest. No. I pulled away. You did it for yourself. Just like I'm doing this for myself. Doing what? I handed him an envelope of my own divorce papers. I filed yesterday. Cass, please. His voice broke. We can start over. Clean slate. That's the problem, Eli. You always want to start over instead of fixing what's broken. I stepped into the hallway. Good luck with the IRS. Behind me, I heard Margot's quiet sobs and Eli's attempts at comfort. The sound followed me down the stairs, a requiem for all our broken dreams. Outside, my phone buzzed again. An email from my old firm responding to the resume I'd sent last week. Position available immediately. When can you start? I looked back at Claire's building, where the remains of my marriage were scattered across a coffee table. Then I looked at my phone, at the chance to reclaim my old life. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply walking away. I typed my response. I can start tomorrow. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. I was settling into my new office at Crawford & Associates when my phone exploded with notifications. Sugar Haven's windows were papered with official seizure notices, and local news crews clustered outside like vultures. I shouldn't have gone, but something pulled me there. Maybe closure, maybe morbid curiosity. By the time I arrived, Margot was giving an impromptu press conference on the sidewalk. This business has served this community for 3 generations, she was saying, her voice steady despite everything. We will fight these baseless accusations, dash. Baseless? I couldn't help myself. Is that what we're calling tax fraud now? The reporter's head swiveled toward me like hungry sharks scenting blood. Margot's face went white. Cashin, this isn't the place, dash. Actually, it's the perfect place. I moved closer, feeling the cameras following me. Why don't you tell them about the 2 sets of books? Or how you tried to steal my inheritance to cover your tracks? You vindictive little dash, she caught herself, aware of the audience. Everything I did was to protect this store. No. I was surprised by how calm I felt. Everything you did was to protect your ego. The store was just collateral damage. Like you're any better? Her composure cracked. You ran back to your corporate job the minute things got difficult. You never cared about Sugar Haven. I cared enough to tell the truth. The truth? She laughed bitterly. The truth is, you were never good enough for my son or this family. You were just waiting for an excuse to destroy us. Mom, stop. Eli pushed through the crowd, Lila trailing behind him. This isn't helping. Oh, look who finally showed up, Margot sneered. The prodigal son and his little accomplice. Lila stepped forward. Actually, I'm here as a representative of the IRS investigation team. She pulled out a badge. We have some additional questions about certain transactions. The silence that followed was deafening. Margot's face cycled through shock, betrayal, and finally, defeat. You were working for them? She whispered. All this time. Since the first red flag was raised, Lila confirmed. Though your daughter-in-law's evidence made our job much easier. Margot turned to me, realization dawning. The anonymous letter. That was you. No. I smiled slightly. That was Claire. Turns out she kept better records than you did. You planned this, Eli said quietly. All of it. Actually, I didn't. I just stopped covering for you. I looked between them, my husband and his mother, united in their delusions until the very end. You did this to yourselves. Please, Margot's voice cracked. We can still fix this. Together, as a family dash. We were never a family. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Margot? The store's success wasn't your legacy. The truth is, it was failing long before I came along. You just couldn't admit it. As I walked away, I heard Lila beginning to read them their rights. The reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. But I didn't look back. My phone buzzed, a text from Claire. "Karma's a bitch, isn't it?" I looked up at the Sugar Haven sign, remembering the day I'd first walked through those doors, full of hope and dreams of family. Now those dreams lay shattered like sugar glass, but something stronger had emerged from the wreckage. Me. Another text came through, this one from Eli. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I typed back, "I know. That's the problem." Then I blocked his number, straightened my jacket, and walked toward my car. Behind me, I could hear Margot's voice rising in protest, Eli's attempts to calm her, and the steady click of handcuffs. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about walking away and letting them destroy themselves. I had a meeting to get to, after all. Life goes on, even when fairy tales end. And this time I was writing my own story. 1 year later, I stood outside the empty shell of Sugar Haven, watching workers take down the sign that had hung there for 3 generations. The late autumn wind carried the scent of dying leaves and change. Claire joined me, 2 coffee cups in hand. Feeling nostalgic? Not really. I accepted the coffee, noting how the storefront's faded paint matched the gray sky, just thinking about karma. Speaking of which, she nodded toward an approaching figure. Eli, looking older and thinner, his designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a work shirt. "I'll give you 2 a minute," Claire said, squeezing my arm before walking away. Eli stopped a few feet from me, hands shoved in his pockets. "You look good. Corporate crisis management suits me better than candy." I studied him. "How's your mother?" "Living with my sister in Ohio. The court-mandated therapy is helping." He cleared his throat. "The sentencing is next week." I nodded. We both knew he was facing probation while Margot would likely serve time. The justice system had its own sense of karma. "I got your email," I said. "About the new business venture. It's different this time." He pulled out a business plan, clearly prepared for this moment. A small bakery, completely transparent finances. No family involvement. "I've been taking business classes, learning to do things right." "Why tell me?" "Because you were right. About everything." He looked up at the empty store. "I spent so long trying to protect something that was already broken. I broke the only thing worth saving." The wind picked up, scattering leaves around our feet. In the distance, a truck backed up to load the dismantled sign. "I'm not asking for another chance," he continued. "Just an opportunity to prove I've changed. As business partners, nothing more." I took the business plan, feeling its weight, literal and metaphorical. "You know I'm engaged now." "I know. Claire told me." He's a lucky guy. A year ago, this conversation would have torn me apart. Now it felt like closing a book I'd read long ago, familiar but no longer personal. "I'll look it over," I said, tucking the plan into my bag. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "I'm silent partner only. No involvement in daily operations." I met his eyes. "And you get therapy for your anxiety." "Real therapy, not just confiding in employees." He flinched but nodded. "Already started. 3 months now." My phone buzzed, a crisis at work needed attention. As I turned to leave, Eli called after me. "Do you ever regret it?" "How things ended." I looked back at Sugar Haven one last time. Through the empty windows, I could almost see echoes of what we'd been, young, in love, full of dreams about family and legacy. But I could also see what we'd become. Lies, manipulation, broken trust. "I regret that it had to end that way," I said finally. "But I don't regret ending it." He nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it." "I know." I smiled slightly. "That's why I'm considering your proposal." As I walked away, I passed the workers loading the last pieces of the Sugar Haven sign into their truck. One fragment caught my eye, the word "sweet" in faded gold letters. My phone buzzed again. A text from Claire. "Dinner tonight to celebrate your promotion?" I typed back, "Yes. And I have an interesting business proposal to discuss." Sometimes karma isn't about revenge or justice. Sometimes it's about finding the courage to close one door and open another. Sometimes it's about learning that the sweetest victories aren't won through destruction, but through reconstruction of yourself, your boundaries, your future. I glanced back one final time. Eli was still standing there, watching the workers, looking both lost and found. We caught each other's eye and exchanged small nods. Not quite forgiveness, not quite friendship, but something like understanding. Then I turned away, heading toward my car and my next crisis, leaving Sugar Haven and its bitter memories behind. After all, some things are better left in the past. But some things deserve a second chance. On the right terms, with the right boundaries, and with clear eyes about what's really at stake. Sweet karma indeed.